Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Gorilla Guide webinar to Supporting a Remote Workforce, Policy, Technology, and Reality. Before we get started today, I want to talk about a few housekeeping items. We're going to have some prizes to give away, which I'll talk about shortly, but one of the important things we want to make sure we cover is questions. So if you have a question about work from home, policy, technology, whatever it happens to be, please ask the question using the appropriate button on your screen. We will be having a number of short panel discussions throughout today's event, during which we'll be taking some of the questions you ask and asking some of our panel of experts to help respond to those questions and provide you with information you can use to help improve your work from home services and maybe even get through all of this a little bit more happily than maybe you may otherwise. We also have some social media stuff taking place here, so if you'd like to participate on Twitter or LinkedIn, we have a hashtag for this, GGWFH, Gorilla Guide Work From Home. So please make sure you participate on social. There'll be some, I'll be showing this on the screen shortly as well. And we have a number of resources in the handouts area. If you're interested, you can download those resources from our vendors that are participating on today's event and learn more about their solutions. During this event, we'll be also giving away 8 $100 Amazon gift cards. You must be present to win. We will be announcing those winners live throughout today's event. So please make sure you stick around for that. And one thing that's not on the slide is we will be asking our folks that are on today's event to participate in a brief, very brief, survey to provide feedback about the event today. There'll be a link at the end of the event, and we'll be offering a $50 gift card to one person who fills out the survey. We'll choose that at random after the event today, probably later today after the event, and we'll be awarding a $50 gift card for survey respondents so we can get some feedback about your thoughts on the event today. To win prizes, you need to be present on the live event. You do have the option to make a donation to a selected charity, which I'll discuss in just a second. And we also require prize winners to submit an IRS W-9 form so we can make sure everything's valid, and a prize winning over the course of a year exceed the IRS limit of $600. We can send you a 1099 at the end of the year. We will be reaching out to prize winners via email after the event to make sure that you're able to collect your card. And if you'd like information about full prize details, please visit the link you see on your screen that has our full terms and conditions for prizes. We do have selected charities for our winners if they would prefer to donate to a charity rather than take the $100 gift card. We have 3, actually. There's one that's not here. The Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund. We are a Gorilla Guide type thing, so we like gorillas. And also One Tree Planted to help environmental causes. There's basically trees planted, and it's a pretty impressive charity. We're also offering direct relief this year as well. Direct relief is helping directly address coronavirus funding needs, and if you would rather than taking a $100 gift card, would rather have us donate that $100 to direct relief to the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund or to One Tree Planted, just let us know, and we'll be happy to do that. If you want to participate on social, hashtag GGWFH, you can also follow us at ActualTech Media, and I'm Scott Lowe on Twitter, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm going to get right into our content today because there's a lot of stuff we want to cover, and we want to make sure we have plenty of time for the great speakers we have on today's event. We're really in a weird time. I don't think anybody's comfortable with what's happening. I know that even for me, I work from home all the time. It's still weird. You know, the plans all of us have made around work, life, school, travel, vacations, whatever, pretty disrupted. I read a note this morning that United Airlines is down 97% on flight capacity, on the number of people flying. They're going to fly 200,000 people in the month of May versus like 2.3 million last year. So it's huge what we're seeing. There's a lot of disruption. We also have a lot of brand new coworkers in our workspaces. I have 3 more coworkers than I used to have. One's 15, one's 16, and one is my wife. So a lot of us that are working from home are not used to having a lot of people around, and those that aren't used to working from home are used to having people around, and now we don't. And in some ways, our companies are struggling to provide resources to make it all work. Now, people are figuring it out, and people are doing a fantastic job at making it all work. but there's still a lot of uncertainty and angst that kind of accompanies what's happening in the world right now. I want to talk a little bit about how ActualTech Media operates, because I think this is, it's interesting to me, obviously, but we've been virtual from the beginning. We've never had an office. We don't have an intention to get an office ever. We have employees strewn about the U.S. and Canada, and we've made this work really well. We're using a combination of tools. Over the years, we use Skype, Slack. Now we use Teams, Asana, and Dropbox. And we previously used Teamwork and Smartsheet. So from a tools perspective, from a collaboration perspective, we have sort of an office space. We have a channel in Teams called Water Cooler, which is exactly what you would think it is. You can't get water from it, but it is a place where we can have random conversations with one another, and people use it to post pictures of their kids, their pets, and just to share the stuff you would expect to share with your coworkers. We've tried to replicate some of the in-office experience to try to make sure that we can build some camaraderie on the team. And over the years, it's worked quite well. What we end up with the opportunity to do is to hire people that we want from wherever they happen to live. We're not limited to a geographic location, but obviously has its own set of challenges at times. But we get really great people from all corners of the country and U.S. and Canada, and it's worked really well. We are in regular touch with each other throughout the day. We have a weekly staff meeting. And for us, this paradigm shift of working from home has not been as intense, although individually we're impacted because we now have new demands on our time from families, and we have folks that have lost childcare, and we are making sure that we are working around all those things with our people. We are very flexible in terms of time away. We don't necessarily have strict working hours. People work when they need to. We try to be as flexible as we can, understanding that people's lives are disrupted right now, and we don't want to be an additional cause of stress. And so that we've been tried to be as accommodating as humanly possible to make sure that our folks are well taken care of throughout what's happening in the world right now. For a lot of organizations, work from home as a standard operating procedure. It was not in the cards. But coronavirus and COVID-19 are here. And I personally see, and I think everybody, if you read the news, this is true, this is going to have a lasting and probably permanent impact in some ways. And it's going to be one of those before and after events that we have in human history. We still talked about the flu pandemic of 1918 as a before and after. We have world wars. We've had terrorist attacks. We've had lots of things that have had a before and after. This is another one. And as we look at business, CFOs are crunching numbers around real estate costs, while COOs are closely monitoring workforce productivity. I do a lot of reading of news articles, and there were stories yesterday about a lot of companies taking a hard look at, do we really need to have this huge office? What we're doing now seems to be working. Maybe we can continue this. So there's going to be a lot of change in real estate, how organizations work. This whole work from home thing, it's not going to go back to the way it was. I don't think it's going to happen ever to go back to completely the way it was. The after period of all this is going to look vastly different than the before period. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing. And I think that we're all going to have to adjust to that. But there's also a lot of supporting technologies that we have to think about to make this work. And this is just a sampling of some of the things that need to happen in order for this all to work. Now, I'm not in necessarily agreement with all of this. I want to talk about one in particular. But I want to start with, we got to talk about virtual desktops. Virtual desktops, everybody has a laptop, but do you just give people laptops? Do you provide them with a virtual desktop environment where all of the data that you're working with stays in the data center? Do you try to deploy some kind of a desktop as a service offering and provide everyone terminals? There's all kinds of different ways we can provide these end-user computing environments to our users. A lot of organizations hand people laptops and make them connect to a VDI instance. Some just hand them laptops and make them work locally, but use other methods to secure data. But we have to think about that in the context of how we need to work our organizations. Multi-factor authentication will be far more important than it was before as well. If organizations aren't doing multi-factor authentication on some of their services yet, they probably will be in the very near future. This is a really critical item when we start to think about distributing our workforce. This also has an impact on distributed data backup and protection needs. So if we send people home with laptops, there might be more data being stored locally than we're comfortable with. That obviously has security implications. So we want to think about encryption and things like that, but it also has data protection implications. And so we have to think about different ways to back data up, especially if we're not providing centralized desktops in a VDI or DAS scenario. It's also collaboration tools. Slack is a clear leader in this space, Microsoft Teams, but lots of other tools we think about in terms of collaboration. We use Teams. We moved away from Slack a couple of years ago, and we still use Slack for certain things, but we use Teams across the company for all of our collaboration. One thing that's kind of controversial is this idea of employee monitoring. There are companies out there that provide employee monitoring tools to make sure people are actually at their computers when they're supposed to be. We don't do that here, and I never would. But for some organizations, that's important. And so there's going to be a different focus on those kinds of tools over time as well. Again, this was not the plan for a lot of organizations, and some of them are scrambling to support people, and people are trying to figure out how to adjust to this new working paradigm. Current technologies make this a lot easier than it used to be, but it's still not a perfect replacement for the workplace. And people are having, some people are having a difficult time adjusting. It's lonely sometimes, and people are, social creatures, and we don't have that these days, especially when you consider all the other limitations on our social activity that are in place because of the current pandemic as well. Security, productivity, scalability, and connectivity are new challenges that face organizations around the world as they adjust to this reality. And connectivity is the big one. People don't think about internet at home all the time if you have an office, but it's critically important at this point. And I think that'll be something that we're going to understand at the end of this where we have last mile deficiency in getting people internet connectivity. It's going to become a critical infrastructure item if it hasn't already in your area. And policy frameworks, which are boring but have to be thought about, we're not necessarily in place for work from home for a lot of organizations. And that's going to be something that has to change pretty dramatically as well. So when we think about this, management is different. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier with a remote team. Managers are going to have to think about different ways to engage their teams than they did before. You can't just get everybody in an office and call it a day. It just doesn't work that way now. And providing some semblance of community is really critical. Making sure people can still be social, that's important. People want to talk to one another. And for managers, I think that understanding that everyone is impacted is vitally important. And that's not always, it's hard to do sometimes, but it's going to be more important than ever as we move forward. But don't forego security for the sake of expediency. This is one of the things we've also seen in the news where this is a target. This is a really difficult time for a lot of organizations. And quick decisions are going to have to be made, and there may not be an appreciation for all the considerations that there used to be. So we have to think about making sure that we don't do something insecure just to get it done fast, and make sure you take security into consideration in everything you do. But always look forward to what normal will look like in a year, and in two ways. One, look forward to getting back to some semblance of normal, but two, try to predict what normal is going to look like for your organization, and then move forward accordingly. And we're going to get started with our very first presentation of the day. This is from Nutanix, and we're pleased to welcome Ruben Spruitt, who is the Senior Technologist in the Frame Division at Nutanix. And we're going to get him underway here.
Watching, thanks for listening. I'm Ruben, and I'm technologist at Nutanix. And in this 10 minutes quick overview, I will explain and show what Frame is and how you can use Frame to support an anywhere workforce, to support work from home and to run any Windows application, any of your Windows application in a browser. I'm a hands-on guy, as you can see here in this picture. And yeah, I would say welcome, meet Frame, meet Nutanix Frame. And one of the best ways to meet a solution, to understand how a solution works and what you can do with it, is just by doing a live demo. And that's what I will do. I will switch to my live demo environment, which is this interface. I'm using a MacBook. I could use a Chromebook, Windows machine. These are all like around me. But right now I'm using a MacBook, and this MacBook is running Chrome. No special browser, nothing installed in the browser, no plugin, no client, no agent, no receiver, nothing installed on this browser. And right now I already logged in and I see a full Windows desktop interface. Besides a full Windows desktop interface, I also could publish just applications, so without a desktop interface. And this interface, the cool about this interface is that, let me move my mouse here so you can see the mouse, yep, is that it's running just Windows apps as you expect it will be, because this is a Windows virtual machine. This Windows virtual machine in this example is running in public cloud. Is an example, we support Azure, Amazon, and Google. We support on-premises data center powered by Nutanix as well. And the beauty of public cloud, sometimes my mouse is moving, that's an PowerPoint thing, sorry for that. If I just run this, you can see it is in the data center. It's in this case an Amazon data center, Amazon speed. This machine has workstation characteristics, which is great. You can see it here. I'm using all kinds of applications, a WebGL application, a car visualizer, and this is all running very smooth on my end. It's up to 60 frames per second on my end, and that's with all kinds of different applications. So right now I'm using car visualizer. I can also use like this application, like Adobe software or Autodesk Inventor software, and just run these apps. You could say if the application runs on Windows, you can run these applications on any device with just a browser. High-end graphics applications, different like applications you can see here, but also office productivity. If it runs on Windows, you can run it in your browser. That's the core message of Frame. The beauty, this is all end-user focused, end-user facing, nothing installed on my machine. I can print, I can use my clipboard, I can do audio playback, I can watch a video, I can even use my microphone, all great, and nothing installed on the endpoint itself. Let me move, I'm just thinking if there's anything else. We have limited time, which is great, not a problem at all. If there's anything else I would like to demo. Later, a couple of minutes from now, you will also know how you can evaluate and see Frame in action yourself in your own environment. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So Frame is a cloud service. Frame is a platform we operate as Nutanix, which is responsible for delivering Windows applications and desktops to your end users, to your consumers, to your contractors, to your students, to your end users. And the only thing they need is a browser, as I explained earlier. So Frame is a service and not software. The service is operated by us, and the service is responsible for all the elements you normally need to run virtual applications and desktops. So a remoting protocol, an infrastructure orchestrator, capacity management, image management, solutions to do analytics, user profile containers, all kinds of technology to make apps and desktop work on any device. And of course, there's infrastructure required to run virtual applications and desktops. And that infrastructure, these virtual machines can run in public clouds, like Google, Azure, or Amazon, or can run on-premises in your own data center or in a co-location environment. And that's powered by Nutanix AHV. So you can choose the infrastructure, the environment, which makes best sense for your use case. If it's public cloud with elasticity, with pay-as-you-go and pay-as-you-grow model, or maybe in an on-premises scenario where maybe your existing data already is, it depends on use case, and based on use case, you pick and choose the infrastructure. The beauty of Frame is when the solution was designed, at the starting point of the design is multi-cloud, multi-tenancy, extreme simple to use. Of course, every vendor will say they are simple to use with great user experience. But I really will challenge you to investigate Frame, and I'm confident that you will see, hey, Frame is different. Frame is really simple to use and to set up. The only thing you need to focus on is your workspace, your applications, and your data. So you will install your apps, you will configure your applications. That's like the software-defined workspace layer above. We handle this desktop as a service layer. We connect with infrastructure, which can be your cloud subscription, can be our cloud subscription, or your private data center, your modern data center. And in 5 steps, I would say you're up and running in 5 easy steps with Frame. The center is the Frame subscription. It's a user-based subscription. You connect the infrastructure. As I explained, different flavors to pick and choose. You connect the identity system where your user identity is stored and connected to Frame. You bring your applications, you install the applications. Maybe you have an existing image, you can bring your image as well. The 4th step is you connect your files. Because apps without files are not so useful. Files plus apps are great. So the 4th step is you connect your files. They can be stored on an existing file server, existing filer, maybe cloud storage or a combination of those. And the 5th step is you define capacity and you just invite people to use the environment. And then a demo, as I started this brief presentation, the demo, run any application in a browser applies, which applies to different types of devices. If the device has a browser, you can run apps and desktops on that device. I wrote a blog post with these 5 steps and explained what these 5 steps mean, also how much time it takes to these 5 steps. And you can have these 5 steps executed in, I would say, like an hour, around an hour or more, depending on how many apps you have and or how complex the network infrastructure is. But if it's like straightforward, you can be up and running in like in an hour or a couple of hours. Good to go. So what are your typical use cases? Support bring your own devices, support work from home, deliver high-end graphics, resource-intensive applications, but also deliver legacy applications, classic applications. Support seasonal and short-term workloads. Maybe there is a particular seasonality for in education, or maybe right now when you want to support work from home. That's great to have a platform which supports seasonality as well. If you want to start, and hopefully you're interested and intrigued by this solution, it's very easy to sign up for a 30-day unlimited user trial. Go to nutanix.com/work from home, or work -from -home, or work -from -home. And you can sign up, you connect your infrastructure, take a look at the blog post I shared earlier, and then you know what the steps are to get up and running with Frame and desktop as a service fast. If you have any questions, feel free to connect with your Nutanix peers if you already have a connection. And if you don't have a connection, feel free to reach out. Happy to help everyone with more technology questions. My background is technologist, but happy to help you with Frame. And I would say thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Ruben, thank you for your presentation. We're going to have a short poll question here for our audience before we continue. If you'd like to learn more about Nutanix, please tell us how you'd like to hear from them around different ways you can that they can engage with you if you're interested after the event. I'm going to leave this up for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to move on to our next presentation from Citrix. And I'll introduce our folks from Citrix while we have this poll up. We'll be hearing from Jonathan Campos, who is the Product Marketing Manager for Citrix, and Adam Watts, who is also in Product Marketing, and they'll be talking about how Citrix Workspace brings a user experience for customers to work anywhere, anytime. So I'll leave this up for a few more seconds, and then move on to our Citrix presentation. And don't forget, please ask questions using the questions button on your screen. That's all really important to us. We actually do want to hear your questions so we can make sure we can answer it in our panel discussions that we'll have shortly. You'll be hearing from Ruben again during that panel discussion. All right, let's move on to Citrix. Thank you.
Jonathan Campos. I'm a product marketing manager here at Citrix. Been with the company for about 5 years with a primary focus of mobility and networking, alongside with my colleague Adam.
Yep. Hey, everyone. My name's Adam Lotz. I'm also on the product marketing team here at Citrix. And I've been at Citrix for about 20 years, so many of you have heard from me talking about all sorts of different technologies we've got. And today, Jonathan and I are happy to talk to you all about how to leverage Citrix to better support today's unexpectedly remote workforce. So we've got lots of different technologies that'll help you out here, and we'll give you just a view of some of the different things we've got going on, and that'll help you all power a better way to work from anywhere. And certainly, when we talk about working from anywhere historically, we might have meant on the airplane, or maybe when you're traveling to see a customer, or maybe you're in the office. And these days, remote work for me, I mean, sometimes I'm working from my home office, sometimes I'm working from the kitchen, sometimes I'm in my spare bedroom. Jonathan, what about you?
I'm always in the kitchen. All the great snacks there, always snacking these days, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a tough thing with this new shift that everyone's got. But Citrix has really been well prepared to support this transition, right? And we've got a wide range of stories we've heard from our own customers, folks that either had to grow an existing environment, roll out a new environment, or maybe they were ready already and working from home wasn't a big transition. So we've got lots of different things going on, both externally and internally, as we look at this transition that we're all going through. And the external pressures we've got are things like consumer expectations, right? Our end users are so used to clicking on a button and getting that app up right away and having that instant on app experience. I know lots of us are doing tech support for our families and friends, and we've seen that firsthand. And at the same time, there's all kinds of new security threats and regulatory shifts that are adding new pressure to the way that IT rolls these solutions out and what users are allowed to use.
And let's not forget the business demands that we have today as well, with new working models and locations that we're choosing to work day to day, scalability issues, as well as business continuity also being top of mind.
Yeah, I mean, business continuity is certainly the most important thing of all the conversations I've had with customers lately. And being able to scale those environments out and really provide that best experience for your end user is where we're at right now. And Citrix has great unified solutions to help you address these challenges. And that can be everything from protecting your apps and data, supporting enhanced user productivity and collaboration, right? It's a new world for everyone working from home and trying to meet with their colleagues and share content back and forth. And then for IT, helping you really optimize that infrastructure that you're providing, whether that's on-prem, in the cloud, or in a hybrid model. And we've seen lots of customers suddenly have to adopt this hybrid model as they've exceeded the capacity of their data center. And they're really looking to us to help them model that out and give them the best experience no matter what their users are connecting from.
And you bring up a lot of good points, Adam. Citrix Workspace is that platform to really help a lot of our customers really accomplish what they need during these challenges. It's everything you really need to be productive in one specific experience. So just like you mentioned, whether you have on-premise workloads, you have public cloud apps or public cloud content, or even SaaS and mobile apps, Citrix Workspace is here to help you out. We want to actually show you during this presentation a good example of what the Citrix Workspace platform looks like from an end user perspective. Starting with on-premise apps, you'll see that here we actually have our on-premise apps readily available. Easy to access, easy to click on, easy to launch, alongside our cloud apps as well. Apps like Excel 2016 for cloud, or even Skype Cloud. Some of you may be also familiar with Teams, also a very popular application that we can also help optimize in a virtualized environment. Also, we have our secure SaaS apps as well, something new to Citrix, and of course, is something that we can bring very easily to the users, providing a single sign-on approach to a lot of these applications where one identity is being leveraged. Now, one thing to add is that what you're seeing here is a desktop. But when we actually move over to a mobile app, users still have the same, a mobile device, I should say, users still have the same experience. So we also have the ability of managing and containerizing these applications so that we can secure those devices as well as secure those applications.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think it's really important to provide that consistent experience no matter what kind of device you're on. And I know I use my workspace every day, and sometimes that's from a mobile device, a tablet or a phone, and sometimes it's from my desktop PC. Certainly been doing a bit of both as I'm working from home these days. Now, as I said, I've been with Citrix for a very long time. I happen to know that the desktop that IT provides out for me is an on-prem desktop. It's managed in that IT data center. We've also got cloud-hosted desktops. As we needed to scale out our capacity, we looked to public clouds to provide the infrastructure that then we provide out through the workspace experience to our end users. And most recently, we've added support for Windows Virtual Desktop on the Azure cloud. So many of you have heard about Microsoft's announcement last year around the new Windows Virtual Desktop platform. We extend that through all the Citrix Workspace capabilities and let you roll those Windows Virtual Desktop Windows 10 multi-session instances alongside everything you've always managed with Citrix in terms of virtualized applications, virtual desktops, or as Jonathan said, our SaaS application experience. So lots of different ways we can provide out that consistent experience to our end users and give them that look and feel as if they're in the office. One thing we don't have showed on here is our remote PC access solution as well. So I can even connect back to my own desktop in the office, publish that out through Workspace, and give a quick and easy user experience to get back to things that might have been on my desktop physically in the office, something a lot of our customers are doing right now as they were constrained for capacity and need to roll out quick solutions. I've also got all of the content I need to access on a day-to-day basis, and I've got my recently accessed files, so I can collaborate with Jonathan, or I can send a file out to an external vendor for review. Lots of different ways to manage that content. And again, have a single place that I log into with single sign-on, all of my applications, my desktops, my file content, so that I can get working right away, and I can easily access the things I need to get connected to. And across all this different technology, we've got context-aware security. So very important for IT as people are suddenly connecting from all kinds of different devices. That's all containerized within the Citrix Workspace app. And we can control what users can do. We can control potential sources of intellectual property leakage and do that in a conditional fashion so that based on who the user is, what sort of device they're on, or where they're connecting from, their rights might change. And we can lock that down very explicitly, not just on the desktop, and published applications where we got things like clipboard control, printing control, file save control, but also on our web and SaaS applications. And then we can apply policies to mobile devices as well. So lots of different ways we protect that information and really help IT secure it, regardless of this new method of connection our end users are using.
Great points, Adam. And just like you mentioned, with the freedom of choice for the user, we want to also give freedom of choice for the admin. So whether you're deploying these workloads on an on-premise data center, again, you have public cloud apps or want to leverage a public cloud infrastructure, you can deploy using those workloads. One of my favorite things about having deployment flexibility is you can expand your workloads as you need them and then bring them down as you don't, giving you that flexibility. I think it's a great point. And another thing to also add here is that our admin experience centralizes all of your Citrix services in one console. I remember when I was managing a Citrix farm, I used to have about 5 or 6 different consoles to manage different services. Now everything has been consolidated within one simplified admin experience.
Yeah, and by centralizing all of that through Citrix Cloud, we've really got some great things going on in the back end to simplify your configuration, to share content between these different services, and share things like our analytics so that we can really lock down user security, monitor user performance, and give you a holistic view of what's going on inside your environment. So lots of great things coming out of Citrix Cloud and this new way to manage your Citrix offerings. And when we look specifically about the Citrix virtualization lineup, right, all of our products to help you publish these applications, whether they're web apps, SaaS apps, Windows apps, we've got a few different ways for you to consume this technology. And it depends on where you're at in your journey around virtualization. So on the left here, we've got our Citrix Managed Desktops product line. That's our newest product, and it's a full DaaS offering, or desktop as a service offering, that you can subscribe to monthly or yearly, and that's either in a bring your own Azure fashion or a fully Citrix managed offering where you've got a single bill you pay Citrix for that consumption in those desktops as you spin them up. And you can try that with as few as 25 users, and it's more secure than a VPN, certainly. And you can give your users that containerized desktop experience and then let them launch applications and get to their content from there, not their personal device. Of course, what most people know us for is our virtual apps and desktops services, either on-prem or in the cloud. So our flagship service there gives you the ability to control those desktops in any location. We talked about hybrid cloud deployment models. And certainly we've seen lots of customers leverage our new business continuity plans to help them add licenses quickly to their environment, help them scale out either on-prem or cloud. As I said, oftentimes even using our remote PC access technology to leverage those desktops that are sitting idle in their workplace today. So lots of flexibility there in that product line. And if you want to go the full kitchen sink offering, we've got Citrix Workspace. That gives you the full workspace experience around intelligence, gives you the premium app and desktop virtualization packaging. We've got endpoint management, content collaboration, everything your users might need to access and collaborate with their fellow employees and get the most work done, even in these crazy times where we're all remote. So lots of different options from Citrix out here to help you. And certainly, if you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to your Citrix reps or your local partners for more information, set up a personalized demo for you to get the most out of these services. And we can be happy to help you look at your environment and help find the right Citrix fit for you.
And likewise, we have a poll question for you for our Citrix folks. And while you're answering, I just want to say thank you to Citrix for their presentation today. That was fantastic. We always like hearing from new folks on our events, and this was Citrix's first foray into the world of ActualTech Media. So we hope you found that useful. We're going to have more Q&A from Citrix shortly during our first panel discussion, which will be coming up in just a little bit here. While we're waiting for our next presenter, we're going to leave the poll question up just for a few seconds on the screen. I wanted to address one of the questions that came in. Someone said that I was smart for not mentioning my wife's age during the intro. I appreciate that. Yes, I've been married for 18 years. Yes, that's right. And so, yeah, I've learned a few lessons along the way. She's great, though, so I'm very lucky. All right, I'm going to move on here in just a second. I'll leave this up for just a couple more seconds, I should say, and then we'll move on to our next presentation. One of the things that we're doing today is we're also bringing independent folks into the mix for presentations. We're not just having vendors present to you. We do have our first independent presentation right now from Ned Bellavance. He's a friend of ActualTech Media. He's also a Pluralsight author, MVP, and podcaster, and you can find him at Ned1313 on Twitter. And with that, I'm going to hit next, and he will be presenting to you today. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and I'm coming to you with some of my pro tips about working from home. So a little bit of background. I started Ned in the Cloud LLC almost a year ago, and that meant I moved from working at home 1 or 2 days a week to working from home every single day. And obviously, there was a period of adjustment there. Now, I'm sure some of the other people that are presenting today have been working from home for 10 years, 20 years. You know, there's some real veterans here, which means that they may have forgotten what it was like to make that initial adjustment to work from home. That's what I wanted to talk about. Making that initial adjustment, because it was certainly an adjustment for me. One of the things I had to adjust to was making sure that I stayed on a routine and didn't let myself devolve into getting up late or staying up really late to do a little extra work or taking my lunch whenever I felt like it and not getting back to the work. Having a routine where I got up at the same time every day, I went through my morning preparation, and then I sat down and did my work for a certain amount of time, made sure I take a break, you know, for lunch or for a snack or a cup of coffee, the same things I would do if I were working in an office, and then stopping work when the day was done and leaving it behind. So that is one big tip, is have a routine. And that dovetails nicely into the second thing, which is if you can do it, and this is difficult sometimes depending on your living environment, have a dedicated space for doing your work. You've probably heard this before. I'm lucky enough to have an office in the basement of my house where I can do all of my work from home activities. Obviously, not everyone is going to have that, but I've heard other people doing simple things like reserving a spot at the kitchen table. This is my work spot at the kitchen table. Setting up a card table somewhere and saying, this is my work spot. Once you set up a spot that is dedicated to work, it helps you shift mentally into work mode. And then when you leave that space, shift away mentally from work mode back into regular mode. I know that can be difficult to set up, but I really would recommend doing that if at all possible in your current work environment. The next thing, and this is also part of like keeping the routine, is get dressed. It can be tempting to get up in the morning and dive straight into work without showering and getting dressed because you're really excited about something you're working on. I can say with experience that the process of showering and getting dressed is also part of that mental shift into work mode. And it also lets those thoughts in the back of your head that are percolating actually come through. if you're sitting down and you're banging away at your keyboard, you don't have the time to let your thoughts percolate in the background and resolve some issues that you might be having about a current project at work. You do need that downtime. You do need that blank time where you're not focused on a task. You're just going through your routine to give you better focus when you do get to your desk and start working on a project. So again, that's an important one, and it seems weird, but yes, shower and get dressed. The next one is, this sounds funny, but get a good chair. You're going to be sitting in this chair a lot. Offices spend a lot of money to get people good chairs. And I'm not talking about like $100 or $200. Some of the office chairs are $500, $600, $700, which seems extreme. But when you think about all the time that you spend in that chair as opposed to other places, it's not completely unreasonable. The chair that I'm sitting in right now was about $300. I might have sprung for a little bit higher if I knew how much I was going to be sitting in this thing, and maybe I will at some point. But definitely have a good chair and have a good setup for communicating with others. Talking about having a good headset and having a good webcam. It doesn't have to be a $500 webcam. I don't even know if they make a $500 webcam, but yeah, don't get the absolute garbage one either. Spend a little extra money, get the nice webcam. It's a little hard right now because they're all sold out, but if you have the opportunity, get one that has good resolution so people can actually see you, and have some decent lighting so it doesn't look like you're sitting in a dark basement, which is what it would look like normally if I didn't have good lighting on me. Also, having a good audio setup just makes you more pleasant to listen to, and especially, during all these meetings and Zoom calls that we're going to be on, being, pleasant to listen to is probably kind of nice. The last thing, and this is also related to communication, is you need to communicate with the other people that you live with, whoever they are, kids, spouses, roommates, what your needs are when it comes to work. When do you start your workday? When do you end it? When do you have meetings today where you need a certain amount of quiet? Are you recording a presentation and you need a certain amount of quiet for that? Communicating to the other people that you live with will make it a lot easier to get what you need, and also remove some of the conflict that could happen when they can't read your mind and know exactly what you need from a work situation. So those are my tips. I hope that you have found them helpful, and thank you, ActualTech Media, for putting this on. Take care, everyone.
As always, Ned, we love seeing you. Thank you for that presentation. And our next presentation comes to us from Duo Security. We are going to be hearing from, I gotta look at my screen here, Zoe Lindsay, who is a security strategist at Duo. And with that, Zoe, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today. My name is Zoe Lindsay at Duo Security, and today we are going to be talking a little bit about multi-factor authentication in a session I like to call It Takes Two, Making Remote Work. So I think that if we take a look at security at an extremely high level, security is the intersection between people and technology. And oftentimes when we are talking about the systems and services that we're looking to protect, we very much focus on the technology side of the argument. And that is definitely getting more and more complex as time goes on, where we once had to protect workstations and services running within our local perimeter, we now have a much more extended perimeter that has to take into account everything that the old perimeter did, but also hybrid cloud solutions with an on-premise component, users' personal devices that they want to be able to access their work through, vendors and contractors that need to have access to systems, your remote employees that are working outside of the office. And increasingly, as we leverage these scalable and affordable cloud applications, they become an important point of access for your users as well. So there's a lot of space, a lot of ground to cover, but if we take a step back and we look at the leading factors that figure into data breaches, there's a clear culprit that stands out. And that is the percentage of breaches that involve weak or stolen user credentials. This is something that can be a simple password. It can be a password that has been captured through some sort of malware or through a phishing prompt. Or increasingly, it may have just been plucked out of one of the massive password dumps that have been put up online in the last several years. But since we know that this is a leading factor in successful data breaches, if we are looking for an easy way to help protect our users and reduce the likelihood of their compromise, then we need to ask ourselves the question, how do you stop attacks that use stolen but legitimate credentials? Which raises a larger question, really, which is, how can you tell the difference between your end users and an attacker? The data shows that if we are relying just on a username and password, that may not be the most reliable indication of whether that's the actual user. We know that those user credentials are one of the most likely ways that attackers are going to gain access. And because we can't patch users in the same way that we can patch systems, it's much more difficult to have a high level of assurance that that user is safe. So this is really the main challenge that multi-factor, also known as two-factor authentication, is looking to solve. It says if we know that a username and password on their own aren't enough, then how do we add an additional level of security? How do we make this authentication stronger? And that comes from adding another factor. Now, what are factors? We're going to talk about some of the different types of multi-factor authentication that are out there in just a moment. But at a really high level, you can think of this as three major buckets. Something you know, which really is what our username and password use would fall under. Something you have, we're going to talk about a few different options of what that might look like, or something that you are, and increasingly we are leveraging these biometric-based factors for authentication. So this is really just an extra layer of security to ensure you're the only person that can access your account. And for true multi-factor, we're going to have different types of factors. So rather than two things that you know, your username and password, and then maybe a knowledge question, this is adding a step to the authentication process, but it isn't really adding a factor. We are still prompting users for two things that they know, and an attack that either through phishing or through system compromise is going to capture that password, very likely can capture the answer to that knowledge question at the same time. So when we're talking about the different factors that are available, we really want to have two or more of this know, have, and are breakdown on our list. So on the right-hand side here, you're going to see some of the common authentication methods that are out there. Push is a technology actually that Duo innovated and introduced to the market that has sort of become an industry standard and leverages a user's smartphone to prompt them with a more intuitive interface. They get a big green button to accept the prompt, a big red button to deny, and this is an interactive prompt. A soft token is also supported within Duo Mobile. You may also be familiar with it through something like Google Authenticator, where when you add an account and you're enrolling this device, you are going to generate a usually 6 or 7 digit passcode that you will then type in. And this passcode may iterate based on over time or the number of events, the number of times that you've generated a passcode. But functionally, this is going to operate very much like a hardware token, sort of that legacy method that a lot of folks were introduced to the idea of multi-factor through. But rather than making you carry something around on your keychain, it's leveraging the power of the computer in your pocket to have a digital version of that token. Then also to phone-based, but based in telephony rather than a data-based service, there are SMS or text-based passcodes. You may have encountered this working with your bank or with a large website online. This tends to be an affordable way for major consumer services to prompt for multi-factor as they need to. Also phone callback, where we will call an enrolled device for a user to confirm that it is them answering the phone. And then there are some newer standards like U2F, a modern web authentication standard that's been driven by the FIDO Alliance. Wearables, actually, Duo Mobile supports wearables for both passcode generation and receiving push. And then those biometrics, which can be a Touch ID, could also be Face ID or fingerprint scanner on Android. Now, I want to mention there are many ways for you to authenticate, but not all ways to authenticate are exactly the same. And if you have a bit of time, I would really encourage you to check out this blog post. It's from about a year ago, just shy of a year ago. And it was a study that some of Google's researchers did in conjunction with Berkeley University, where they wanted to test how effective different forms of multi-factor authentication were against preventing against automated attacks. And this is a really important attack vector to try and defend against, because these are not the only attacks that you're going to see. Depending on your organization and the value of the data that you have, you may very well be getting more targeted attacks. But a lot of the noise, a lot of the volume of attacks that you're going to see are sort of these massive automated attacks that are usually leveraging older vulnerabilities that up-to-date devices won't be as vulnerable to. But the data here is really interesting. They found that the highest level of security came from on-device prompts, something like push, where it is not just a passcode that can be added to multiple devices, but is actually requiring information unique to a single specific device. Then they found that something like a security key, a U2F token, a physical token, or something like Touch ID on newer MacBook Pros would provide a high level of security as well. That SMS was effective at blocking a lot of automated attacks, but less effective at protecting against those targeted attacks due to the growing prevalence of SIM spoofing and such. But then what I want to point out here is that when we start to look at these knowledge-based or sort of these fuzzy use-specific traits like sign-in location, the reliability and the value of that second factor starts to precipitously drop. A second email address as a prompt may not provide an extremely high level of security. The last sign-in location may help against a fully automated attack, but any sort of bulk-based attack can just use a VPN in the region where the login is happening from. So when we are looking at these factors, the type of factor that we choose is important, but also the usability of that factor is important. We see that 10% of these challenges were blocked by knowledge-based attacks. 94 were blocked by device-based challenges. When we're talking about the usability of these challenges, that's important because the easier it is for a user to authenticate, the more likely it is that they will do so instead of trying to avoid that process and find a way around it. Now, there's one more big reason why folks care about multi-factor, and that comes down to compliance. Just about any industry that you're in, there is likely some data protection compliance standard that you're going to have to meet that mandates multi-factor because the industry-wide recognition is that passwords by themselves are no longer going to be enough. So if this is something that isn't touching your organization yet, I would really encourage you to get out in front of it before it becomes a mandate, if it is not already. And I want to let you know if you have questions about how multi-factor would look for your organization or how you could go about getting started with it. I think Duo does a great job of helping out there, and we're more than happy to help. I hope that today's information was useful for you, provided some additional context on what multi-factor is and maybe why it's important for your organization. And I look forward to hearing your questions during the next break. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Zoe, for that great presentation. Again, we'll be hearing from Zoe again shortly during our first panel discussion right after our next presentation, which will be from WorkSpot. But we're going to have a poll question up on the screen for a minute around Duo security. And I want to explain a little bit how today's event is working. It's a little bit different than the events we normally do. Every hour we're going to hear from 4 solutions as well as an independent speaker, and we're going to have a short panel discussion. And that's in lieu of Q&A per vendor. So we will have an opportunity in a few minutes to have a short panel discussion with the folks from Citrix, Nutanix, Duo, and WorkSpot to hear more about them. And actually what we're going to be doing is taking your questions that you've been asking so far throughout this event. So again, please keep those questions coming because we do want to hear from you. Please ask some just general questions about work from home, security. They don't have to be related specifically to an individual vendor. We would like to hear some of those general, how do I make this work question as well. In fact, I will explicitly ask for some of those. If you have any questions on your mind, please make sure you ask them so we can make sure we can get some answers from the experts for you. We're going to move on to Brad Peterson, who's Vice President at WorkSpot, for our next presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, this is Brad Peterson from WorkSpot. I'm here today to share with you a short presentation on WorkSpot cloud desktops and cloud workstations on Azure. The perfect PC is the notion of pairing just the right device that's in front of you, connected to your monitors and so forth, with a super high powerful desktop or workstation up in the cloud. So that combination allows you to be anywhere in the world and actually be massively productive and very secure as well. So that is the idea. Now let's jump into some of the thinking behind that, okay? So first of all, historically, the way organizations used to do this is they'd build and configure PCs and desktops, laptops, and they'd ship them around the world. You know, it was a little tough getting them all installed and operating exactly the same way, same security. You'd have things breaking, so it was complicated. But, you know, organizations ran this way for a long time. So then after that, you know, traditional VDI sort of came around, which was let's centralize and virtualize this in a single data center somewhere. And we'll own the problem in there. Now that helped you because now you could actually manage the operating system and deal with security a little better, but you couldn't really get the performance the way you wanted, and the latency was really bad for people that were far away. It was also very expensive and complicated to go forward with. So what we've done is come up with the WorkSpot Cloud Desktop Fabric, which takes the cloud desktop that's been built in the cloud native, microservices based, and fully integrates it into all of the 58 regions of Azure around the world. So we now, through our cloud, can launch desktops or workstations in any of these clouds anywhere. If you look on the world map here over on the left-hand side, you're going to see we're in Azure, we're providing desktops in here, and we're connected, even connected into the data center. So if the desktop needs access to that, it can. But what if you have employees around the world, say over in India, software developers or something? Well, we can launch those desktops right in close proximity to them as well. They'll have a great experience here. And if they need to access the customer's actual data center, boom, they're going to use the super high-speed networks available with Azure. All right, so this is massively simple, and that's what's very different about traditional VDI. Is you go up into a browser and connect into WorkSpot. You manage Windows 10 images with the applications you want on them, the authentication that happens through either your AD or Azure AD, and all the security policies associated with the groups that you have existing and the users associated with those groups. So you can set that all up right in a browser. And with that, you can control whether people can cut, paste, copy, print, or not from their machines wherever they might be in the world. And the IT organization can use all the same tools they use now to manage this, SCCM or Intune, because they're Windows 10 VMs made available line of sight over the network. All right. Now, performance is phenomenal here in this case because remember, 58 regions of Azure around the world is wonderful. We tie into that with our global fabric. So wherever the user might be in the world, we'll put their desktop in the Azure region closest to them. So more often than not, it's less than 50 milliseconds. And as the end user has greater than 5 or even 10 megabits per second bandwidth, they're going to be great. And in that regard, you could have 2 4K monitors connected to whatever device it is you have, and you could be doing some rich office productivity apps or even CAD development as well. Now, how is this different? You know, because we say this is simple and turnkey and SaaS. Fundamentally, the punchline there is we deliver the desktop, not the stuff it takes to build the desktop. And you're on the hook to actually go and pull the resources together yourself and pay for those. No, all the way over to the right-hand side with WorkSpot, it's like the whole desktop is delivered globally at a flat fixed fee. If we start over on the left-hand side, how does this compare? Legacy VDI, when it's installed on-prem, well, you actually have to get your own broker system, pay a lot for that. And then you put your servers and your storage and your network and everything in place there too. All right. Then you even have support on top of that. So that's just a lot of money up front and very complicated. So what happened next in the evolution of time? Well, these capabilities of the brokering mechanisms oftentimes made their way into the cloud, but still that's broker as a service. And you still have to go find your own underlying infrastructure, your CPU and memory and storage and various things like that, and band all that together. And now you're on the hook for making that work. And that actually is different in any location of the world you put it in, whether it's physical or cloud-based. Even if you go in Azure and attempt this yourself, you'll find that the Azure resources are of different prices in different regions around the world. So it's complicated getting them work, and the price will be surprising and different every month that goes by. Very different from WorkSpot, where we provide all that for you. We aggregate the separate services associated with Azure into a full turnkey solution, a desktop, and the desktop is delivered to the end user and all at a flat fixed fee, no variable pricing. You might even find instances in the world that are attempting DaaS, but even DaaS in the world is different depending on what region of the world it might be. As we talked about, it could be different pricing, different configurations, and certainly it will be different administrative tools and monitoring capabilities globally. They won't be connected together. And so that actually takes us to WorkSpot. Where WorkSpot, through a single browser experience, you can launch any number of desktops or workstations anywhere across the 58 regions of Azure. It's all connected together. It's a single user experience, and you can also monitor the whole thing from a single user experience as well. Okay, so that is the cloud desktop fabric. And on top of that, what happens is our customers typically then use the browser to manage all this, and then they do their level 1 support on top. I keep talking about the cloud desktop fabric, but what is that? Okay, so here we have it. The cloud desktop fabric is made up of these layers. Well, look at this. All the way on the bottom, you got the cloud layer, and this is, of course, the Azure layer. Imagine those 54 regions of Azure around the world, and every one of the regions has a series of data centers in it, and inside that, there's a bunch of services that are running in there. Now, those services are like, RD Gateway or site-to-site VPN, but they're also CPU, memory, and storage, and even authentication like AAD or even multi-factor authentication, all sorts of different services in there. And instead of grabbing those yourself manually, and like I said before, paying different prices in different regions around the world for those and trying to make them all work together and trying to get a single picture of all those, our fabric aggregates all of those vast services around the world together and brings them up through the stack here at a flat fixed fee as a turnkey solution with a service level agreement on the desktop. All right. So the cloud Azure Cloud has all those little services down here. Our fabric on top of that identifies one of the regions as a master region, and on all the other regions that you need with your users around the world as expansion regions. And you can configure one of those regions and the other ones pick up all those attributes and so forth and share that information automatically. You don't have to do it yourself. You don't manage those separately. They are all integrated together. Now, the layer on top of that is like use cases. So use cases are like, Windows 10 operating system for call centers or the financial industry or maybe healthcare, or maybe it's even GPU accelerated workstations for the architectural engineering and construction agency or oil and gas. So you pick your use cases. Typically, you create a different Windows 10 image for that use case. Those are all stored in the various parts of the world. They need to be stored and launched. The layer on top of that, of course, is the end users. So the end users are the people. These could be employees, these could be contractors, these could be partners of yours, they could be anywhere in the world. And with the right credentials, they can authenticate in and they could effectively pull up an image that supports their use case. And then they could actually execute that down through a region that's configured for them. And that will aggregate those resources out of the Azure cloud necessary to allow them to work as fast as they possibly can. Very, very close to their location. Okay, so if we take a look at this architectural diagram right here, over on the right-hand side, this actually is going to be the customer data center down below here, right? And the customer data center is going to have all of your Active Directory and your data. You're going to connect into the subscription that's up top here. Typically, you have this with a site-to-site VPN connection, and then you have file servers and app servers and things here. When WorkSpot comes into play, we actually launch the desktops and the workstations in this area for you. And then the end users down here, they can connect in and they can launch their workstation or their desktop, and it'll present to them directly. And they'll have a high-speed connection into their file servers, their app servers, Active Directory for authentication, and so on. And all of this is managed over here on this side in the WorkSpot console that you see here. All right. Now what that looks like here is if I open up my WorkSpot client, I can come into here and authenticate. First time with full credentials, this time just with a PIN. I can set that up to use a PIN or require full credentials each time. And then I click on the icon and that will actually launch the desktop. So this is an example of a GPU accelerated desktop running out in Azure West in my region. And then here, I actually have a Revit application running. And so I can pop this around. And as I run this now, it's amazing because it balances, right on my mouse as I flip this around, and it's super responsive. GPU accelerated, running up in the cloud, and high performance. I can work from remotely. I can work from home, as so many of our customers are actually doing right now. So that is a very quick summary of WorkSpot and our cloud desktops and our cloud workstations. Thank you.
Brad, thank you for that presentation. We're going to put our first poll question up. Our next poll question up for WorkSpot, and we're going to leave that up for a minute or so. And while we have that up, we're going to have our first panel discussion where we have 5 panelists from the previous 4 presentations. I'm joined for this panel discussion by Ruben Script from Nutanix, Jonathan Campos and Adam Watts from Citrix, Zoe Lindsay from Duo, and Brad Peterson from WorkSpot. We'll be giving relatively concise answers to questions today so we can maximize our next 10 minutes. So the first question, some of these questions are very about work from home in general, and some are product specific. But one of the ones I thought was really interesting, and maybe Brad, I'll ask you this one, is should companies create a written telecommuting remote working policy if they haven't already?
Yeah, that's interesting. As as I am home, like everyone else is, I'm actually doing a couple of webinars a week myself. And so we take all of our amazingly successful, happy customers and pop them into an hour-long webinar format. And I ask them exactly that question. And what we found is there's a bit of a trend, Some folks were kind of dabbling in the notion of cloud desktops, in parts of the organization where it was like necessary, maybe a use case or an application. And once COVID-19 hit, they kind of just went all in. And so they just flipped a switch, launched hundreds and even thousands of desktops and workstations, and sent people home. And what's happened over the last 4 weeks is they've found, because a lot of cases the use cases are measurable in productivity, they've found productivity enhanced and has been increased while folks have been home. And they can see now into the future where they can see they may actually have more flex space, and so their commercial real estate costs, they might go down, or at least they might not expand as they grow their companies. So a lot of the CIOs that I talk to right now are doing that. They're actually putting policy in place for when we come back to work, what that will look like, how they will take advantage of cloud services beyond desktops, and communication and so forth, collaboration and so forth. But yes, folks are taking this seriously because business continuity was disrupted, and that is going to impact a lot of businesses. So I think going forward, you're going to see a lot of this, a big change going forward. The technology to go into the cloud has always been there for the last several years. People haven't moved into that space, and I think we'll see more and more of that going forward for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the adversity creates opportunity, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned we can apply when people start going back and seeing how we change in the future. Our next question is actually specifically for Nutanix, Ruben. The question is, do you have any ROI data on Frame versus like an on-premises VDI solution that using their own hardware versus a cloud-based SaaS environment? I assume that there's some discussion around OpEx versus CapEx, but what kind of data do you have to support that, to help answer that question?
Yeah, good, very good question. Before I dive deeper into that question, it's key to understand like a fundamental difference between like traditional VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, or traditional virtual apps and desktops. There is a lot more like IT heavy lifting involved, because you're like involved in designing, building, maintaining, updating this complete platform to run virtual apps and desktops. And with desktop as a service, the name already said it, it's as a service. The platform is delivered as a service, and that has a complete different impact in like budgeting, has different impact in just cost from CAPEX to OPEX. So that's by design when you switch from software, desktop as software, to desktop as service. talking specifically about like ROI, TCO, it really depends. So my background is consultancy. I've done that for many, many, many years. So without context, you never can give an honest answer for that question. So because there's no context, I cannot share like a reasonable response on that. But yeah, I see a lot of customers moving from like traditional virtual apps and desktop on-prem to as a service. Nutanix is very successful in that space. Like the company Frame was acquired by Nutanix, and the starting point of Frame was as a service, building and control plane as service from the start of the company. When you look at the big vendors in this space as well, they all are focused on as a service, and that's the reality for many of us today, for tomorrow, and for the near future. So as a service is the future. What are the impacts for the ROI TCO calculation? It depends. Happy to have a chat. Happy to take a look at the use case and business case and have a more reasonable conversation about that particular topic.
Great, thank you for that. Next question is for Duo. The question was around Active Directory. How does this work in conjunction with Active Directory? Does it replace anything? Does it just augment it? That's the question from the user.
Yeah, good question. So the setup is obviously going to vary a little bit whether you're using local Active Directory or whether you're using Azure AD. But effectively, what you're going to do is have a really lightweight proxy, at least for the on-premise Active Directory, that is going to sort of sit in between the resource and Active Directory. So when somebody goes to log in, their full request, authentication request, goes to that proxy and is split. Primary authentication is still passed through and processed by Active Directory. There's no change there. But after primary authentication is completed successfully, it then completes the secondary authentication, reaching out to Duo. By doing it this way, it means that you don't have to pass your credentials outside of your environment. Really, the only function of that proxy is to serve to split that request and send only the relevant portion of that request to Duo. That proxy is also going to be the mechanism by which you would sync groups or add or remove users.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Next question I have
Absolutely.
is for Citrix. The question is, I apologize, I'm having some trouble keeping up here. If you think about the criteria that it takes between having a desktop that you will carry around versus having something behind the data center walls that's virtual, how do you weigh that? Like, what are some of the criteria you would think about for an organization just handing people laptops with everything local versus doing something with with a virtual desktop environment?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think the situation that we're in today really reinforces the value of moving those assets into the cloud or into your data center, right? So maintaining that infrastructure somewhere where IT has more control for what's going on, but still having flexible options for your end users to access that content, I think is really important. And we look at all the different solutions we've got here today, and everyone's helping IT bridge that gap between physical devices and the cloud or the data center. And there's just a lot of different ways to slice it, but in the end, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is really give IT more flexibility in controlling their intellectual property, and at the same time enabling their users to be more effective no matter where they're at. So certainly I think we've seen with home-based workers today, lots of people will take their laptops home and work, which is great, but then we've got all the chaos around VPNs and connectivity and potential data leakage and data loss. And we'd rather have everyone bring that into the data center or put it in the cloud where IT can really wrap some tight controls around that and still support their end users.
That's great advice. Thank you. I have one more question I want to ask Brad that I'm going to ask everyone away, and then one final thing, and then we're going to move on. Brad, the question for you is, what does it take to get started with WorkSpot? How quickly can it be up and running?
Well, the cool thing about WorkSpot is that we deliver the whole desktop or the workstation as a service. So it's the whole thing. So oftentimes what happens when we work with customers is they have their own data center, of course, and then oftentimes they're in Azure already. And so they'll have a subscription in Azure where they put maybe Azure Active Directory, Office 365, they got some server workloads and some files and so forth. So when they actually come to us and say, I need 100 or I need 1,000 or whatever it might be, desktops or workstations, in any of the 58 regions of Azure globally around the world, we actually just create another subscription on their behalf. Like you guys saw in the recording I gave you, tightly couple that via VNet peering and then launch those desktops for those folks in proximity to the users wherever they are in the world. And so we deliver the whole thing. IT doesn't actually have to do any manual labor or lifting or configuration or even management going forward. The other thing we do is like you don't have to use an Azure Administrative UI. You've got the WorkSpot Administrative UI to launch all this, and you don't get an Azure bill. And that's because we actually charge you a flat fixed fee for the desktop or the workstation that you want. And so it's really up to a customer. If they already have an Azure instance already, then they don't have to set up the site-to-site VPN from their corporate data center to Azure. That's already done. If they have their Windows 10 image that they want to use with their antivirus and their applications already installed, we take that image and use that as a template. And so now we just integrate it into Azure Active Directory, and we have security and group policies that are actually vectored directly in. And then they pick their users or their consultants or contractors anywhere around the world, and we will launch the desktop or the workstation station closest to them and have the entire thing all tied together at an enterprise level. And they do all this with a single browser-based experience, a single pane of glass to manage everything in 58 regions of Azure around the world, as well as monitor everything also. So it can be as easy as just a few days and getting security checked out and so on and so on. Launching this. And what happens is after you have set this up initially and you're launching your first desktops, then you can launch hundreds or thousands of around the world in just minutes after that because the underlying connections have all been made. And that's what's worked out really well during COVID-19 is that all of our existing customers came to us immediately and we grabbed resources out of Azure and blew up all their desktops, launched them for them in days, and they were all up. And then the new customers coming in just had the initial setup, and then they were up and running well. And so it's quite quick. If you guys have any other questions, you can reach out to me directly. It's just brad.peterson@workspot.com, and I can get into a dialogue, get you guys more detailed information as well. Thanks.
I have one question I wanted to ask each person, but please keep it very brief because we're actually a little bit behind. As you think about either working from home for people who aren't used to it, or for organizations that have been thrust into working from home, what one piece of very concise advice would you give them? And Joey, let's start with you on this one. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I would say this is sort of less specific to security and more lessons that I've been learning is going to fully remote is make sure that you're building some time into your schedule to maintain those social connections with your coworkers. We have a standing appointment once a week where the agenda is officially there is no agenda. It's great to just see other people's faces for a while. Whatever you can do to really make your workspace feel separate from how you normally use that space so you don't feel like you're trying to work where you're sitting as well. But that would be my bet.
Adam.
I'm going to give this one to Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Adam. I would say it's all about a routine. I think that for me, that's what's really worked the most. Get up, grab your coffee. If you exercise in the morning, exercise in the morning. Try to not snack as much in the kitchen. That's my problem, to be honest. But for the most part, I think the answer is all about a routine.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Ruben.
Yeah, I created my top 15 list. I will present a little bit later in this event.
That's right.
Don't create your top 20 of to-do items for that day. Make it top 2, top 3. That's one. Dress lazy is work lazy. So I would say dress up normal. And the other one is don't start the day with social media catch up because it will consume an hour for sure. So don't start with social media catch up. Do the tough tasks first.
Brad.
Hey, those are all great tips, by the way. Hey, and you know what? I was not a work-at-home person. 4 miles from the office, I would go in every day. So this whole working from home thing is interesting. For me, I actually upgraded my my modem to get gigabit speed into here and ran Ethernet, so I was like not even on wireless. And the other thing that I did, and this is my tip to everybody, is I would say use your webcam more often. When you're connecting to folks, try to make that personal connection to them, whether it's one other person or a bunch of other folks. And then I like the other tips, too, to have that social connection. I don't know if you guys jumped on Zoom a little bit and done Zoom meetings. Every Friday we've got a Zoom happy hour where we all connect socially as well. And we just keep telling people, go comb your hair and put on a shirt and so forth and turn your camera on and really connect. So yeah, I think all those tips are great and it's and super helpful at this time.
Thank you to our panel for this great discussion, and thank you for your presentations. We're going to move on now to give away our first two $100 Amazon gift cards. And our winners for this round are Chris Bailey from Texas and Joe Perez from North Carolina. We'll be reaching out to you after the event and with information on how to collect your gift card. And our next presenters are from Liquid, and we have Melissa Acharya, who is the Director of Marketing, and Philip Clark, VP of Engineering.
Hello, and thank you to ActualTech Media for inviting Liquid to be part of this presentation. My name is Melissa Acharya, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Liquid. We're a composable infrastructure startup out of Broomfield, Colorado. If you don't know much about composable infrastructure and how it allows you to manipulate resources remotely, then you'll be happy to know that my colleague, Philip Clark, VP of Engineering, will go through that with you after my quick presentation. I'm in Chicago, and my company headquarters is in Colorado. I work from home quite a bit. In fact, I've worked from home exclusively for nearly 3 years, and I want you to know that even as a work from home veteran, I'm feeling the effects of COVID-19 as well. It's a tough situation, so I hope some of what I have to say resonates with you. Just some reminders that today's remote work environment is significantly different from the work environment that I'm used to. If this is your first time working from home, I assure you that it's not usually this bad. I don't have to juggle a full household normally. It is hard to focus. And because of that, you might think that you're bad at remote working, but it's probably because there's a virus and you're worried about your friends and your family and the future implications of all of this. And when you're stressed, you crave social contact. Just every time I need social contact, I can pop off to a cafe or I can go to a co-working space. And right now I can't do that, so I get dressed and turn on video conferencing. The social contact that you crave can be given to you when you're speaking with your coworkers face to face, even though one of them might be a potato the entire time. Encourage your coworkers to get on video and have some fun while you're at it. My second tip is to create a dedicated workspace, whether it's an actual desk or an ironing board in your living room or an upside down laundry basket with a chair. When you have a dedicated workspace, it helps you get into that work mode and it will help you feel like you're actually in an office working. My next tip is to take multiple screen breaks. What does that mean? It means get up from your desk, go grab a sandwich, go walk around the block, play with your kids for 10 minutes. Not only is this easier on the eyes, but it's also easier on the mind, and it'll help you reset your brain to conquer the next project. My final tip is to forgive. Forgive yourself, forgive your colleagues. You might find yourself being short with a coworker or even your CEO. Just keep in mind that it's the stress. We're all going through a major crisis and we all have unique stressors and concerns. So just try to give people a little bit of leeway. And with that, I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Philip Clark, VP of Engineering for Liquid. He'll go through specific work from home tips for data center employees and the ways in which composable infrastructure can help businesses adapt to the unique needs of remote workers.
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everyone. I'm Philip Clark, VP of Engineering. Here you see me wearing my protective mask in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. Tip number 5, I'm going to show you how businesses can use composable infrastructure to adapt to the unique needs of remote workers, especially those of you who work in the data center. I'll take the next few minutes to show you how to configure hardware resources without being at the office. In this example, we have a request to add a couple of SSDs to a server. Normally, you could drag your cart to the server and install the drives that way, But nowadays, no one is on site, so this is not an option. You can accomplish the task using liquid composable systems without ever leaving your home office. Here we have a Windows server. Notice there is only one boot drive. Now I'll add the two drives using the Liquid Command Center UI. And there's the first drive. And the second. You can also load a different operating system onto the composed SSD and boot the server from that, all from the Liquid Command Center UI. You can control resource visibility using the concept of groups. For example, these three SSDs will not be visible to the Windows server. I'd like to point out that composability also works for FPGAs, NIC cards, and GPUs. Those devices also show up in PCI space, just like the NVMe SSDs in our example. In addition to Windows, Linux is supported, as well as hypervisors such as VMware ESXi. Liquid connects the hardware at the PCI layer, so no special drivers or agents are needed in the operating system. Thank you for watching. Here's our contact info. Please reach out to us if you have any questions or if you have interest in liquid composable systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Liquid for participating in today's event. We're going to ask you the same poll question we've been asking all along. If you'd like to learn more about Liquid, composable infrastructure is an interesting space. I'm actually very interested in it because I've been interested in conversion, hyperconverged, and all that good stuff for a very long time. So composable is the next logical iteration of that technology. So I'm going to leave this poll question up for just a minute while I introduce our next presenter. So please answer this question. It's important to us. Veeam, and we're going to talk about Office 365 backup for remote workers with Veeam. And Edward Watson, who is the product marketing manager in that group, will be talking to us in just a minute here. I'm going to leave this poll question up for just a minute more. Don't forget we have a number of additional presentations today. We also have coming up for us Tim Crawford of Avoa. He'll be talking to us about some CIO priorities that you might want to be thinking about, even in times of adversity, especially in times of adversity. And we'll have another Q&A panel coming up shortly as well as some more gift cards and some great content. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Veeam for the next part of our presentation.
Hi, thanks for having me today. My name is Edward Watson. I'm a product marketing manager at Veeam Software, and I'm here to discuss why Office 365 backup is essential for remote workers. And specifically, with the time we're currently in and the massive transformation and really the transition to remote work is absolutely remarkable what we're seeing. It's one of those shifts you don't see that often, right? So some of the numbers here are quite extraordinary. If we look at just the sheer number that Office 365, how many users there are, 200 million is absolutely staggering. 12 million Microsoft Teams users added in 1 week alone. So that actually happened fairly recently, bringing the total number of Microsoft Teams active users up to 44 million. So these are numbers that are just quite extraordinary. These are troubling times, but they're also remarkable times in terms of the innovation we're seeing, in terms of the transition we're seeing to remote users, and certainly leveraging productivity tools in the cloud. And with that comes risk, right? So with this transition, devices are a necessary part of our workforce, and although there's more risk involved, in these devices, they're not going away, right? Cell phones, laptops, these are all they all drive productivity, and none of them are going away. We simply need to adapt to this newer environment of having the majority of our workforce, being remote, accessing and sharing more data than ever before, and just realizing that we need to safeguard that data. And certainly backup and data protection is a part of that safeguarding. Security patches, which may not be available on users' remote devices. So, because you might have employees outside of the group policy, your company doesn't necessarily have the dictation over whether the devices get the patches they need, when they need them, right? So that can be a real disadvantage. Home routers, right? Which we know that most employees don't have really the sophisticated security capabilities at home. They might have consumer level, security instead of enterprise level security, which is needed and in some cases necessary. And of course, public Wi-Fi, which is still a big deal when it comes to vulnerabilities. We can't guarantee that our employees are going to, run a VPN, a secure tunnel, make sure all the data is encrypted. We can't guarantee they're going to follow those rules, take those security measures, and so we have to make sure that they don't lose the passwords, that that no data loss actually occurs because of all of these different vulnerabilities for remote workers. And of course, when it comes to Office 365 itself, within this remote environment, there's still many different vulnerabilities, from user error, from the different retention policies that Microsoft offers, when you fall outside the window of those retention policies, you may think something's protected when it's not. There's internal security threats, such as departing employees, malicious insiders, external security threats, the ransomwares we hear about in the news. And of course, many companies have both legal and compliance requirements that they have to meet for their own internal needs. They may need to find that needle in a haystack, deliver that to a compliance officer, and of course, hybrid environments only add to the complexity, right? So when it comes to all of these different reasons why you need to think about protecting Office 365 environments, just keep in mind that this is only half of the story. The other half of the story I'll get to in a bit. But for now, how often do these reasons really happen? And so we actually asked this survey quite often, once every quarter or so. And we asked the question, what forms of data loss have they experienced? And by far, user error definitely tops the list. Security threats, retention policy gaps also come on the list as well. But the fact of the matter is, these things really happen, right? These things actually do happen, and we do need to mitigate data loss. Just because something's in the cloud doesn't mean it's protected. In fact, 6 out of 10 organizations are unprotected. Things like backup, things like recoverability, compliance needs, these are an afterthought for many organizations. This was a survey conducted by IDC. And they found by far that 6 out of 10 organizations, they believe that the out-of-the-box native capabilities in Office 365 have them covered. But again, 6 out of 10 remain unprotected. And I mentioned this is only half of the story, right? So the 6 reasons why, the core reasons you need to think about protecting that Office 365 data, that's really only half the story. The other half of the story, the other half of really understanding why you need to protect that data is that ultimately it's your responsibility. So the customer perception, really the market perception, is that, you know, we move to the cloud, you know, the cloud takes care of the productivity tools, it takes care of enabling my organization, it takes care of the infrastructure, the data, but unfortunately that is so far from the truth. The truth of the matter is that the uptime of the infrastructure is Microsoft's responsibility, but the data remains within the customer's realm of responsibility. So ultimately, once you've wrapped your head around the fact that the data, you're the owner of that data, the data is your responsibility, and you're responsible for protecting that data, then you can begin to start wrapping your head around the next steps and what you actually need to do to protect that data. Microsoft actually come up with this this framework. They came up with this framework that's available in the Office 365 Trust Center, where essentially the top row is the primary responsibility, which is their responsibility. And then ultimately, you as the IT admin, you as the IT decision maker, your responsibility in terms of the data, in terms of the backup, in terms of the security and regulatory needs. And you can see there's a definitive line in between what is the responsibility of Microsoft's and what is your responsibility. And there's things like Recycle Bin. There's things like the data center to data center geo-redundancy that Microsoft offers that simply do not equate to a backup. They don't equate to full data retention. They don't fill the necessary gaps needed in order to ensure data protection needs. So again, pay a lot of attention to your responsibility, the lower line, and make sure that you know you're fully covered moving forward. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and just finish off the presentation with a little bit about how a company like Veeam does Office 365 backup protection. So we have a product, Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365. And really the purpose of this product is to eliminate the risk of losing access to that Office 365 data, whether that's Exchange Online, whether that's SharePoint Online, whether that's OneDrive for Business, or even Microsoft Teams. So the bottom line here is, you know, we offer any location, right? Any storage target for you to store your data in, whether that's on premises, if you have some local storage you want to use, great. If you want to use cloud object storage or an S3 compatible object storage, great. You have the freedom to do so. We offer various ways with which you can restore that data. So a backup's nothing without a restore, right? And then of course the legal and compliance needs to find that needle in a haystack, enable you to get very granular e-discovery capabilities to search and find whatever data you need. And of course, from a paid version, we also have a community edition, which is our free version of this product, which is specifically designed for Office 365 implementations of 10 users or less. So you can check this out if you have a smaller organization or simply want to try out that product for free. And of course, we've been constantly innovating on this product. So one of the things we recently came out with version 4 was we realized that many organizations are becoming cloud first, right? They want that cloud optimized deployment option, want to leverage object storage. So whether it's Azure Blob, whether it's Amazon S3, whether it's S3 compatible object storage, we give you the capability to reduce the costs, leverage that unlimited scalability, and simplify your deployments. So definitely one of the more innovative aspects of this product. And speaking of innovation, 25 different recovery options. So if you look at across all the different applications, OneDrive for Business, Exchange Online, SharePoint on premises, SharePoint Online, however your business needs to restore that data, I think that's kind of the critical point of all these options. This might seem overwhelming, but all of these options serve a purpose. Whether you want to email it as an attachment, save it as a file, save multiple SharePoint objects as a zip, whatever use case you need to do in order to recover that data and efficiently pass it on, we give you that capability. And of course, to share a few stats, 99,000 downloads of this product. We have larger organizations, smaller organizations, many different industries, whether environmental, the medical field, American football teams, fashion, all kinds of different businesses. And they all fundamentally understand the need to protect Office 365 data. So just to wrap up, a few takeaways. You can read up or share our Office 365 Backup for Dummies ebook. So we partnered with Wiley on this. You can either use the link that we provided there, or certainly you could simply type in Google Office 365 Backup for Dummies, and you would certainly find this would be the only ebook in the market that explains this specific topic. And lastly, see for yourself. So take the free trial. If you're interested in this product, take the free 30-day trial, and hopefully you love what you see. So lastly, thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you to ActualTech Media for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to put up the poll question for Veeam. If you like what you saw, we'd like to see if you'd like to learn more about Veeam. We're going to be doing our next independent presentation, and this is from Tim Crawford from Avella. He's a CIO extraordinaire and helps organizations with technology strategy and a number of other things. And Tim's going to talk to us not necessarily directly about what's happening with work from home and all that stuff, but there's some other things that CIOs especially, and those that are working for CIOs, which is a number of people in our audience, need to keep in mind as far as organizational priorities go, and some of the things that they need to be doing and thinking about over the next, in the coming months. Because again, as we look at a time of change, there's a whole lot of potential for things to get shaken up a little bit. And Tim's going to share some nuggets of wisdom with all of us. So I'm going to let the Veeam poll run for just a few more seconds here, and then I'm going to move it over to Tim to talk to us about, give us some actionable insight into the CIO perspective for moving into the future. So give me a second here, and I'll get this underway.
Hi, my name is Tim Crawford. I'm a CIO and strategic advisor at Avella. I'm going to talk about the top 8 issues that are facing CIOs over the next decade. The first item on that list is technical debt. Now, technical debt involves more than just technology. It also involves debt that comes in the form of older architectures, older processes, organizations, and culture. It's important to think about all of these different pieces to make sense of what is right to hold on to and what makes sense to retire and move on from. The second item on the list is cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity is not a new topic. It's a perennial topic, whether it's the IT organization, the security organization, or even the executive team. But in this day and age, it's important for us to think about how cybersecurity applies to customer engagement, to data management, and also privacy, regulatory, and compliance issues. The third item on the list is artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence will be used in a number of different ways. Probably less so as a product and more as a feature within a core product. Artificial intelligence allows us to leverage data in more meaningful ways, ways that humans just simply can't keep up with. The next item on the list is cloud computing. Now, cloud is also a common topic that's come up over the last decade or more. But in this day and age, we'll be looking for cloud to be a differentiator for enterprises moving forward. Not everything moves to the cloud. Cloud is definitely not the cheapest option you have available to you, but it does open up the possibility for things like AI, for things like data management and customer engagement in ways that you can't do with your traditional data center. The next item on the list is edge. Now, edge computing is something that we've maybe thought about as Internet of Things in the past, but it really talks about how we get closer to customers, how we get closer to end devices, whether you're looking at it from an operational standpoint or looking at it from a customer standpoint. Edge becomes a source of engagement and a source of data, and both of those are becoming increasingly more important for both the organization, the IT organization, as well as the company moving forward. The next item on the list is something I just mentioned, which is data. Now, data is going to be the ultimate test for enterprises. You have to understand how to manage the data, not just the bits and bytes of it, but understand what data is relevant, important, and how you can start to analyze it. Whether you're talking about machine efficiency or machine learning, or you're talking about customer engagement, data is ultimately going to be at the base of that. The next item on the list is 5G. Now, 5G is just starting out. We're in the very early stages of this, but leaders in the space are starting to look at ways to leverage 5G to do things that they couldn't do through other means. Look for companies that might leverage 5G within a factory automation scenario or factory floor. You also might see 5G opening up new possibilities and experiences for customers. But 5G is something that we will be looking for in the next decade. And the last item on this list is research computing. Now, research computing is something that you might say, well, wait a second, I don't do research. I'm not a higher ed institution. That's left for other organizations. But hold on a sec. Every enterprise is having to do something that's very similar to research computing in the sense that they are managing gobs and gobs and gobs of data. They're having to analyze that data. They're having to come up with new algorithms and new ways to be able to analyze that data. And interestingly enough, that is exactly what we're trying to do with research computing. Look for folks to start leveraging things like cloud as they start out in this space, but then as they get more mature, they might develop their own research computing environment. And those are my top 8 issues facing the CIO in the next decade.
As always, Tim, we thank you very much for your presentation. You're always a fountain of knowledge for our audience, and we really appreciate you sharing your insight and feedback as organizations really look to the future to determine what they're going to do with IT. And next up, we have Scale Computing. We have Alan Conboy from the Office of the CTO at Scale Computing, and he's going to be talking to us about desktop, which is great as the theme of today's event.
Hello, and thank you for your interest in our how-to video on quick enablement for work from home and remote desktop access. In this video, we will show you how to set up a connection broker and gateway, how to connect desktops to the broker remotely, and how to enable end users to connect to remote desktops via any browser. Please keep in mind that this video assumes you have already downloaded the available pre-configured and packaged VMs and read our documentation. If you have any questions on how to access these VMs in our documentation, please visit our website, contact a Scale Computing representative at 877-722-5359, or email us at workfromhome@scalecomputing.com.
Once you have downloaded the connection broker and gateway from us and followed the configuration steps included with the download, to get the IPs assigned to both the broker and to the gateway, there's one additional step that you're going to need to follow on the gateway. What that is, once you log into it, is to run this command right here, leostream-gateway space-broker space, and use the IP here that you assigned to the broker. Bear in mind, you run this command on the gateway. It's what tells the gateway which broker to work with. Now, once you have completed that, and you know what your IPs are, it's simply a matter of pointing a browser at the broker. Logging in as admin, the default credentials are admin and Leo. Once you've logged in, you're going to take several steps through the left here. Step 1, you're going to stop at downloads and grab a copy of the LeoStream agent. This is the small piece of code that you will install either directly or through a GPO directly on all of the physical desktops in your environment that you wish to bring under management and reflect via HTML5 out to your user base. If you have non-Windows machines in the environment, desktops such as Macintosh, Linux, etc., you can use the Java version. Now, from here, we're going to jump down into setup. The first thing that you do, tell the broker about your authentication, whether that's Active Directory, LDAP, etc. Add an authentication server and simply run through the screens right here. Tell it about the DC, the domain name, the IP of the DC, and credentials so that the broker is able to search for users. And once you look at moving into actual VDI, has credentials that can join machines to the domain, should that be the direction that you're looking to go. If you have a large domain and you're only wanting to search from a specific point in the subtree, specify that right here. Make sure that allow user logins from this authentication server are selected and hit save. Now from here, we're going to drop down to gateways. Here you're going to tell the broker about the gateway. This is a very simple process. Give the broker the name that you want the gateway to be known as, just internally to you. The IP address or URL that is associated with your outside to the world facing internet interface, NIC and IP, that you're going to port forward to the gateway on port 443. And then specify the internal IP address, internal to your network IP address of the gateway itself, and hit save. Now from here, this is the part where you go ahead, set up your port forward. That varies from router type to router type, firewall to firewall. But it should be a very simple matter. The only port you need to forward is port 443. Make sure, and in almost all cases, this is already set to allow outbound and related inbound traffic. Now, from here, we're going to jump forward and go install the agent into a desktop machine. Now, this can be done via GPO using silent switches. This also can be done manually. Let's jump over to one of the remote physical desktops in the environment to install the agent and verify that remote desktop protocol is enabled. Right here, I've downloaded the agent directly to this machine. The easiest way to do that is to simply point the browser on that desktop machine at the broker, go to downloads, and it'll download that agent directly for you. If you're going to do this manually, it's simple. A double click, accept the license, next. Don't bother with either of these for now. They're just not applicable to what we're accomplishing with this setup. They're advanced feature functionalities that can come into play later as you expand your virtual desktop environment. Here we're going to go ahead and supply the IP address of the broker, and then simply hit install. It's that simple. Okay? Now, the next thing we're going to do while we're here is go ahead and go into Settings and Control Panel. Right here in System and Security System. And verify that RDP, Remote Desktop, is enabled, turned on. Okay? And make sure the users that need to have it have access. The user that owns this desktop, I should say. Okay? Now from there, we're going to jump back directly to here. once the agent is in and installed, it's already reporting home to the broker. So if we jump up here to centers, you will see an enrolled desktops center that has been created online. And since we've only installed one so far, we'll see just one. As we add additional desktops, they will show up here. Let's jump down here to resources, desktops. This is where it ties all together for you. That desktop we just added, this Christian HP desktop. We simply come in here, hit edit. We know the agent's working because all of the MAC address and IP address information, as well as the OS type, is being properly reported in here. By default, this sits at policy assigned from a pool. We're going to want to change that. We're going to change that to hard assigned to a specific user and simply start typing the domain user ID of the user whose desktop this is. Make sure it's set to available and hit save. Now from here, we're going to go configure how our users can get to their desktops from their browsers. Protocol plans, edit the default protocol plan. Now this top section, this is for only realistically users that are there in the office, and that's not what we're solving for today. What we're solving for is work from home, getting people able to be virtually at their desktops. The way that we're doing that is via a browser. Now, LeoStream understands different types of connections and what they're coming from inherently. So what we want to focus on is what to do here in the web browser category. By default, RDP is set to 1. We want to change that. We're not trying to push RDP sessions out via the gateway to those remote desktops. We want that firewall that a browser provides in place, keeping what's your data inside your network and keeping what's on that user's home machine to that home machine. We're going to come in and change LeoStream HTML5 viewer from Do Not Use to 1. Then, from this dropdown, we're going to specify the gateway. If these are Windows boxes, make sure that the protocol RDP is specified. The connection gets made between that user's physical desktop and the gateway. Here you're telling the broker what protocol to use to make that connection. You also have several other options you can enable or disable right in here, up to and including giving your users the ability to print documents locally that they're working on in their browser session. File transfer, optional and entirely at your control. The last thing that you're really going to be concerned about right here is matching the level of security for those RDP sessions to what you've got configured for RDP in the desktops. Network level, well, that's right here. If this checked box is on, it's network level and driven off their credentials. If this checked box is off, it's not. It's standard. Alternatively, you can simply say, let the server choose. Okay? At this point, you're ready, provided that you've done your port forward. Point your users at that external world-facing URL or IP address. Make sure they're using HTTPS in the link that you send them, because this entire infrastructure is built on Secure Sockets Layer, SSL, and HTML5. Okay? That's how this stays secure throughout the chain. They simply come here, type in their domain credentials like they always have, like they do when they're sitting at work, and their password, hit sign in. The second they do that, their desktop and any other desktops that you've made available to them show up right here. All they need to do is simply click on that link for their desktop, and in a brand new pop-up window, up comes their desktop right there in the browser. Performance driven entirely by capabilities local to the machine. And the bandwidth they have available. Looks, acts, work just like their normal work desktop environment because it is their normal work desktop environment, with no having to lift and shift to the cloud, no having to go and buy tons of new devices and laptops and trying to provision VPN, etc. This truly enables work from anything, anywhere that has a browser and internet access.
And thank you to Scale Computing for participating in today's event. If you've been with us for any length of time over the past few years, you've seen Scale's solution up close and personal. They have a pretty compelling hyperconverged infrastructure solution on the market that's been growing in popularity. So we're going to leave this poll question up on the screen for just a minute. We have our next presentation, which is from a partner of Scale called LeoStream. And we're going to be hearing from Karen Gondoli, who is the CEO of LeoStream, about their solution. And then we're going to do our next Q&A control, I'm sorry, I was going to say control panel because I was just listening to Alan. Our next Q&A panel that will consist of Melisha from Liquid, Karen Gondoli from LeoStream, Edward Watson from Veeam, and Alan Convoy from Scale. And we'll be taking your questions live. So again, if you have questions about anything to do with work from home policy, work from home technology, whatever, please make sure that you ask in the using the questions button in your console, because we really do want to make sure we get to as many questions as we can. If we can't get to your question live, we apologize. We are actually getting a lot of questions, so we appreciate your patience. And with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Karen. Thank you so much.
LeoStream is a software company on a mission to be the premier platform for providing remote access to hosted IT assets. We don't care if those assets are your VMs on your favorite virtualization platform, instances running in a public cloud, or physical workstations in the data center. We focus on connecting users to their allocated assets and remain vendor neutral when it comes to where you host those assets and what display protocol you use to connect to them. The LeoStream platform consists of 4 components. The first is the connection broker. It's the brains of the operation. You install it onto a Linux machine, then configure it using the administrator web interface. In that web interface, you'll define the pools, plans, and policies that model the business workflows you need to implement in your hosted desktop environment. On the hosted desktops that you're managing, you'll install our LeoStream agent. It's a small component that runs as a service on Windows or as a Java application on Linux, and is responsible for monitoring the user's remote session. LeoStream Connect, then, is our software client. It allows you to turn any client device into a LeoStream client. Finally, there's the LeoStream Gateway. It's the newest addition to our family and provides gateway functionality for network-isolated desktops, as well as a built-in HTML5 viewer for clientless access. To start, let's look at an on-premises environment. In this case, your LeoStream connection broker and your hosted desktops are all located on the hosting platform of your choice, be that Azure, vSphere, Scale Computing, what have you. Users and their client devices communicate directly with the connection broker to log into your LeoStream environment. The connection broker receives the user's credentials, authenticates the user against your chosen authentication systems, and then, based on who the user is and where they're logging in from, the connection broker offers the user a LeoStream policy, which indicates which pools the user has access to. When the user requests a connection to a desktop, the connection broker hands the desktop connection information back to the client device, and the display protocol makes a direct connection from the client to the hosted resource. At that point, the connection broker's job is done. Now it's just waiting for notifications from the LeoStream agent, like if the user's gone idle or disconnected from their session. Note that in this architecture, the connection broker doesn't sit in the data path of the desktop connection. That means you get the native performance of whatever display protocol you decide to use. And the broker doesn't act as a single point of failure in the user's connection. Looking more closely at the LeoStream components in the on-premises diagram, first and foremost is the connection broker. It's your single pane of glass for managing users and their IT assets, no matter where those IT assets are hosted. LeoStream's provisioning capabilities are particularly well suited for hybrid cloud environments, giving you ways to automatically provision and delete desktops to meet demand, even letting you create schedules for spinning up and terminating instances so you can avoid sprawl and large compute costs associated with it. Beyond our comprehensive pooling capabilities, we also provide a wide assortment of plan and policy options that allow you to model just about any VDI workflow you can think of. Yes, we provide persistent and non-persistent desktops, but we can do every shade in between and beyond those workflows as well. Finally, because the connection broker is the control center of your environment, it knows everything that's going on and it logs it. That gives you one location to retrieve audit-level tracking of who's using what, from where, and for how long. That not only allows you to track asset usage, but can also help you plan for capacity in the future. The other component in our on-premises diagram is the LeoStream agent. It monitors the user's remote desktop session for events like operating system logins and logouts, session disconnects, and more. You can use those notifications in the connection broker to build rules that control the user's session and desktop, such as automatically logging them out after they've been idle for 2 hours. The agent also has a role in the connection broker's provisioning capabilities. It's responsible for a set of sysprep type actions, like updating the newly provisioned VM's hostname and joining it to the domain. Lastly, the agent is responsible for LeoStream's last mile and user experience features, like attaching network printers to the remote VM or controlling USB device pass-through. Okay, now let's move beyond your premises. What does LeoStream look like if you have remote users? Here's where we introduce the LeoStream Gateway. It lives in a location that is network accessible by your remote users and by the desktops. Those desktops are isolated in a network that is not otherwise accessible by the user's client device. Maybe users are at a coffee shop connecting back to your data center. Or maybe they're in their office and connecting to a virtual private cloud in AWS. The concept is the same. Tuck your desktops in an isolated network and then use the LeoStream Gateway to tunnel the display protocol traffic from the user's client to those desktops. The LeoStream Gateway also acts as a tunnel for your LeoStream login traffic. Note that my connection broker is located in the same isolated network as the desktops to ensure successful LeoStream agent and connection broker communication. Now, no matter if your users are on-prem or remote, they can log into LeoStream environments using the LeoStream web client or LeoStream Connect. Which client they decide to use can be based on if you want to provide web-based clientless access or if you need some of the other end-user experience features available in LeoStream Connect. With this diagram in mind, let's look more closely at the final two components of the LeoStream platform. First, a little more detail on LeoStream Connect. It's an application that provides login access to your LeoStream environment from Windows, Linux, and macOS devices. It's important to understand that LeoStream Connect handles the login process, but it's not part of the final desktop connection. LeoStream Connect obtains the user's credentials and passes them on to the connection broker. The connection broker then returns the user's list of offered desktops based on the user's policy, and LeoStream Connect displays that list to the user. The user selects a desktop to connect to. LeoStream Connect grabs the connection configuration from the connection broker. Then, and this last step is important, LeoStream Connect launches the software client associated with the user's display protocol using the connection configuration from the connection broker. That means when the user is connected to their desktop, not only is the connection broker not in the data path, neither is LeoStream Connect. So if, for example, the user connects using Mech9 TGX, then LeoStream Connect launches the TGX receiver and connects it directly to the TGX sender on the remote machine. The only time LeoStream does get in the path of your desktop connection is when you use the LeoStream Gateway. The gateway tunnels the user's connection from their client device to their remote desktop. It can tunnel high-performance client-based protocols like TGX and also provides a built-in HTML5 client that can launch RDP, VNC, or SSH connections inside your browser. I make one last point on this slide about rogue users. In LeoStream, a rogue user is someone who logged onto one of your hosted desktops without going through LeoStream. As long as your desktops have installed LeoStream agents, your connection broker knows who those users are and what they're connecting to. So let's say you want to keep rogue users out. In that case, isolate your desktops in a network that isn't accessible from the user's clients, and direct users to log into LeoStream so you can tunnel their connection through the LeoStream gateway. Now rogue users are simply unable to connect to the machines. When you build a proof of concept with LeoStream, you can install a single connection broker and use its internal database to hold your LeoStream configuration. But when you move into production, you want to consider the amount of load on your LeoStream environment and how you want to handle failover. Remember that I said the LeoStream connection broker isn't in the data path of your user's connection. That means in LeoStream, load isn't measured by the number of simultaneously connected users, it's measured as the number of simultaneous user logins. A single connection broker can process about 5 user logins per second with no discernible delay to the user. So what if you have 1,000 users all logging in around 9 a.m.? What do you do then? Well, in order to scale your LeoStream environment to handle enterprise-level logins, you build what we call a LeoStream cluster. A LeoStream cluster consists of multiple individual connection brokers all attached to a common external database. You can use Microsoft SQL Server or Postgres, depending on which your database team prefers. All connection brokers attached to the same external database act as a unit, working off a common job queue that processes user logins, center scans, and any other LeoStream jobs. So if you have a cluster of 3 connection brokers, now you can process 15 logins per second, and you see how that scales. Clusters also provide high availability for your LeoStream environment. In a clustered environment, if one connection broker becomes unavailable due to a network issue or hosting platform failure, the other connection brokers in the cluster continue to process user logins and any other jobs in the queue. You can also model workflows in your clusters to support disaster recovery scenarios. For example, you can spread your desktops and connection brokers in your cluster across multiple data centers, and then direct users to the primary or DR data center, depending on whether a failover event has occurred. So as you probably noticed, LeoStream is a very flexible and powerful platform, and I just barely scratched the surface here. But my time is up.
Thank you, Karen, for your presentation. And we're going to put our next poll question up. And while we have, we're going to have our next panel discussion. Do I have panelists in the room here?
Hi, Scott.
Hi, everybody.
Hey. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Hi there. So I want to make sure everybody was here. We have Melisha from Liquid, Karen from LeoStream, Edward from Veeam, and Alan from Scale with us. We first of all have a question for Liquid, and I have a couple general questions I'd like to ask the group as well. The question we got, Melisha, is love the demo, but what makes it work? What's the hardware and software combination that comprises the solution?
Hey, Philip, can you go ahead and answer that one?
Yeah, I will. Hi, everyone. This is Philip. I'm VP of Engineering at Liquid. The way that it works is that we have a PCI switching technology. So we have a top-of-rack PCI switch. And what our solution does is that it allows different devices to be plugged in to a port, as well as a host to be plugged into ports. And then we provide the software that connects those together. So at a device level, you can pick a specific device, let's say a GPU, and then you can map that over to any host, any server that you choose, and you can do this dynamically in real time. We have specialized technology to allow kind of dynamic add as well. So just like you saw in the demo where the SSDs will add in automatically, the GPUs will do so as well.
Perfect. The next question is for Karen. What sort of security features are available with LeoStream?
I missed a word. What kind of features?
Security.
Security features. So LeoStream's job is really to secure the access and the login. And so the security features all go around authenticating users. So we do provide support for a variety of different types of multi-factor authentication. We see a lot of people these days using our Radius integration. So LeoStream connects as a Radius client and talk to any identity provider like Okta or Duo or SecureAuth that provides a radius agent, essentially. We do also support some smart card functionality, biometrics, and various other things, like I said, for securing the access into the environment.
Excellent. The next question is for Scale. Alan, we have you here.
Hi, Scott.
Hey there. So the question is, where do I install the centralized management console for the Scale hyperconverged solution? Is it cost extra?
So that's actually the beautiful part about Scale. The central management console for a Scale cluster is inherent in the cluster itself. The individual Scale nodes talk directly to each other in real time via a state machine process that runs on each node. What that means is with a Scale cluster, we've completely eliminated the entire concept of a legacy, for example, a vCenter server or System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Every node in a Scale cluster knows everything going on every other node in real time. No more third baseman management server required.
Excellent. Our next question is for Veeam. Bear with me because this is a bit of a long one. So the question starts with, Microsoft seems to think they have a good data resiliency, built into their cloud product for essential data like email and stuff like that. Can you explain why a third-party product is still something we might want to consider beyond what's already available in Office 365?
Yeah, that's an absolutely fair question, and I think it all comes down to, there are still gaps, right? So whether it's accidentally deleting something, whether it's something falls outside the retention policies that are default in Microsoft, maybe the customer wants more granularity over backups or recovery capabilities simply for compliance reasons. There's various reasons. I explained 6 today. And really, it all comes down to control outside of what maybe Microsoft might offer default in the system. It all boils down to that control, that ability to get the backups, recoverability, and meet those compliance needs the way your business needs to.
Perfect. Next question we have is again for Liquid, and it's, do you have case studies available that people can look at? That was one of the questions we got in. They're interested in understanding who's using it.
Yes,
we do.
We absolutely do.
Okay. I'm sure that they answered yes to the case study question on that case, but I wanted to make sure I asked that because that was a very good question. The next one is for Leo Stream, and it's how do I test it if I want to try it out? What are the requirements?
Yeah, that's quite simple. So there's a free trial button right up on pretty much every page of our website, so you can click that, and that'll ask you, that'll request a trial license. We do provide a 30-day trial license that you can use the software for free. And then the software is downloadable from our website, and there's some installation guides there. It's quite simple. Both the broker and the gateway run on CentOS or RHEL 7. And then there's a simple curl command you run to pull the RPMs from our repository, and it does the install for you, so you can be up literally in minutes.
Perfect. I am going to ask all of you one other question to answer, and it's the same one I asked in the previous Q&A. But actually, I'm going to give it to whoever wants to take this one. Then I'll ask my generic question. This question is, beyond stay-in-place, work from home, what are thoughts, tips for accessing from places like coffee shops, airports, hotel lobbies, and other free Wi-Fi hotspots? What are some of your thoughts on that?
I'll wade in on that one, and probably Karen can as well. One of the things that Scale customers have been doing is leveraging LeoStream's technology to remotely access both their virtual machines and their desktops via HTML5, enabling those end users to get at their workflows, their desktops, etc., from anything that has a browser and internet access, done over port 443, leveraging things like Duo, MFA, to securely access from anywhere on anything. And the beautiful part about doing that via HTML5 is it's a reflection. That browser itself acts as something of a firewall. Now, Karen can certainly expand on that, but that has been proven to be quite the boon to Scale's existing customer base.
Yeah, and
anyone else? Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry, this is Karen. Yeah, just to kind of expand. So, LeoStream has always been in the remote access business, and we're glad to help we're glad to be helping people now. And I think that's going to continue going forward, because what we see is that teams tend to be spread out more, not just because they're working from home, but because they have global workforces. And so providing a remote access solution allows teams that are actually dispersed around the world, it allows them to collaborate on projects together and just be more effective in general.
Before we go, I do want to ask my standard question that I'm asking everyone today, and it's a simple one. It's thinking about the new work from home realities we're seeing in a lot of places. What one tip would you give to the audience, either around adapting to a work from home lifestyle, or organizationally what they should be thinking about policy and technology wise? What's one tip you would give everyone? And Melisha, let's start with you. You gave some great tips in your presentation, by the way. Are you muted, Melisha? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I just got called away.
Oh, that's
Philip,
okay.
if you could take the question.
I could take it, Melisha. Yeah, this is Philip from Liquid. I think the one tip that we would leave with people is to think about flexibility, composability. The idea there is that you can have, from our perspective, our product, you can have machines that are not necessarily defined ahead of time. You can have lots of resources, GPUs, FPGAs, SSDs, and you can connect those in a flexible way, and that has never really existed before. So that is something that can be helpful for kind of this work at home, work remotely kind of situation that we're in.
Edward, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to give a simple answer for that simple question, and that's make sure that your workforce have their environment backed up, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't think protecting Office 365 environments has been more important than today, right? So I think as we see the majority of our workforces become remote, I think now, the accessing and sharing of data and protecting that data becomes even more critical. So, I think just make sure your data is protected, regardless of where it resides, whether it's behind your four walls, but especially now that it's remote, make sure you have full control over that data.
Karen.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've seen a lot of and that I encourage people to explore more is the cloud. We're seeing a lot of workloads being moved up into Azure or AWS or various other clouds because that in its nature gives you that remote access, anywhere access. So now your users are free to roam around, and those clouds are regional and global. So you can always put the user's resources closest to them to improve performance. So that would be the one thing that I would say is, as you move forward, start thinking how you can leverage the cloud to provide these remote access solutions.
And Alan.
I would say that if there's one thing that the past month has clearly demonstrated to sysadmins across the SMB, the mid-market, and even the distributed enterprise, is VDI historically was thought of as a nice-to-have. It just became a must-do as part of a DR strategy, as part of a distributed workforce strategy, etc. It's time to really take a look at what you can do from an end-user computing perspective, specifically with remote access, secure remote access enabled. And in doing so, I think you'll discover that the best way to handle that remote workforce is to absolutely not push your corporate resources, your corporate network, out to encompass those home networks, pushing your own personal network, your corporate network out into the least secure networks on the planet, is just a horrible idea for many reasons, some of which have already been touched on in just the last couple of minutes, but rather leverage these technologies that almost everybody on this call has brought here to virtually bring the user, no matter where they are, no matter what they're using, back to those centralized resources where you can have security and control that you've always needed.
Thank you very much to our panelists for this great discussion. Before we go on to our next segment, I want to bring up one additional, not for the panel, but just for the audience. It's a comment that came in from Rodney Barnhart. I hope you don't mind me calling you out, Rodney. This is a great comment, and it's something that I think that, and I alluded to this in the keynote earlier, but Rodney writes, our work from home challenge has been the type of internet access our associates have at their homes. We have seen that they may have had something that was good for normal use, but now they have so many people at home trying to do work and school at the same time that it's been problematic for their performance. And I really do believe that the situation the world finds itself in, we're going to discover where those last mile problems truly exist. We know there's vast swaths of the country that don't have good broadband internet. I am very fortunate here that I live in a relatively small town, and they happened to drop fiber by a couple of years ago on their way to another location. But not everybody has that luxury. And it's not just the internet that comes to your house. Gigabit speeds are no good if you don't have decent Wi-Fi. So there's going to be, I think, over the next year, there's going to be a whole lot of rethinking about how we have to think about home technologies as well as that last mile problem. Rodney, thank you very much for your for pointing that out. It's an important thing. And our next segment is going to be a prize giveaway. We have two more $100 gift cards. Our first winner is Mike Summers from Minnesota, and our gift card number 4 goes to Jason Verdulis from Washington. And our next presenter is from Liquidware, and I'm going to kick it off right now.
We'd like to thank the folks from ActualTech Media for inviting us to participate in this work from home webinar series. Today, Liquidware, we want to talk about how you can speed the adoption of your users that need to work from home in this time of crisis. Really, there's a lot of ways that you can go about allowing users to work from home, but a lot of them tend to be piecemeal. And Liquidware, we're in the business of being partners with some of the largest virtual desktop vendors in the market, including Citrix, VMware, Amazon, Nutanix, Microsoft for WVD and RDS. And so we're going to talk about how you can rapidly onboard or burst scale your current virtual desktop environment to support more work from home users. Liquidware provides adaptive workspace management. So if you're using our suite of solutions to manage your user in your current Windows environment, even if it's a physical desktop environment, they can seamlessly flow and be onboarded to a work from home environment like Citrix or VMware, Amazon, or WVD, the ones we mentioned earlier. We do this with our 3 products known as Profile Unity, FlexApp, and Stratosphere. They provide portable user environment management that follows the user from session to session, even from physical to a virtual desktop. Application layering from FlexApp that allows applications to be attached to a Windows session regardless of where the user is, just as long as they're well connected. And then we added visibility to the user environment so we always know the user experience. We know if the user is being productive in their workday. We know how to troubleshoot those desktops and to handle bottlenecks or performance issues before they become mission-critical showstoppers. All our solutions work across virtual, cloud, and physical. So if you have a physical desktop or laptop user that has been well connected in the past, they can immediately work from a portable virtual desktop in the cloud. No matter where you are in your deployment of virtual desktops or workspaces, Liquidware can help, even in the planning stage, the onboarding stage, and the production stage. And we do this by providing Stratosphere to be able to help plan and also to know applications in use, for example. We use Profile Unity to help you onboard. They have a 0 downtime migration plan, so you can use that solution to migrate users over or have really a 0 downtime migration so they're instantly productive at first login. And then we help you in the production phase as well as providing applications from the cloud and knowing the user experience, also having secure policies that follow the user. A little bit more about Stratosphere UX. It's an agent-based solution that reports back to a central management server known as the Stratosphere Virtual Appliance. That's where our console is, and you can generate user experience reports out of these. So not only can you use it to assess and plan for your new desktop environment and onboarding users to work from home, to know what that environment should look like, the base image, the applications in use, and things like that, but you can use it in the ongoing environment to troubleshoot it, to analyze that environment, to be able to monitor it, to use it for first tier support and troubleshooting. Profile Unity comes into play by giving the user one portable profile that can automate or really end the migration cycle between desktops. It even lets a user move from something old like Windows 7 to Windows 10 or any version of Windows 10, and even multi-session Windows 10 that you find in WVD or your WVD entitlements for Citrix and VMware. There's context-aware settings that allow those users to have a contextual environment that follows them around. So if they're on premises and they need a printer automatically mapped for them because they're in a hospital environment, they'll get that because it is contextually aware and we know where the doctor or nurse or staff member is from floor to floor. That's just one example. Another one is providing contextual aware applications that show up on the desktop. If the user is working from home, maybe they need certain applications. If the user is at a remote site, maybe they need other ones. If they're in the office, yet again, different ones. So we can provision applications out and attach them using FlexApp with this technology. Profile Unity also includes application rights management, so you can streamline image management also by restricting users to not be able to use certain applications in the base image. It also has a profile disk technology, which enables a rapid login in Citrix and VMware type environments for a very persistent experience in a non-persistent desktop. It also works with FS Logics hand in hand if you'd rather use that technology from Microsoft, and then we still give you a portable profile that moves the user from one desktop to the next. FlexApp can help you by attaching those applications that have been rapidly packaged to be able to be played back or really attached to any Windows session, regardless of the operating system version. So you package the application once and you're able to attach it. And you can even do this from object-based storage like that from Microsoft Azure, Google Blob, or from Amazon S3. It allows you to give users the applications they need to be productive. For example, you can assign certain applications to the human resources group or the accounting group or to any other contextual aware setting and make that application readily available at first login. So instead of getting a rather vanilla Citrix session, they get the applications they need attached just in time without managing the base image. Our solutions are designed with a methodology for cloud staging. In other words, you can not only use file shares on your network, but you can actually stage user profiles, applications, and user data in the cloud. And you can always know what that user experience is with Stratosphere. So for instance, if we start on the left side of this, you show that we have legacy Windows desktops that users are on today. We get the user under management, and we're able to parse that out and save that to object-based storage in the cloud from any of these three cloud vendors you see here at the top. User-authored data can be synced over to any of these cloud services as well. User-authored data can also be synced over to any of these cloud services that you see here, so users have access to the data that they have created that they need to do their job, regardless from where they've logged in. Once they're ready to log in to their new work-from-home environment, and that could be any of these seen here, you can set it up to where all of this data gets and flows into the session. User profiles are readily recognized, and it's a smart user profile. It's not one encumbered by large cached areas. Applications can follow the user from FlexApp. Their user data will follow the user because you've made it synced up to the cloud through Profile Unity, and you can know the user experience across any type of environment. Let's take a look at the way that Stratosphere really helps out with its remote access dashboards. 3 questions that these are going to answer. Can your employees access their environment and work from home? Are they able to operate normally? And do they have access to the applications and the data that they need? So these reports that come out of Stratosphere can let you know what you have going on with your virtual environment and whether the users are productive. Here we can see at a glance which users have logged in from which geographical areas if you're a large conglomerate, and also you can get a handle on how many users are actually connected to the environment, the time that they are active, and the capacity of your own virtual desktop environment. And you look at your at-risk users, and this is based on core criteria that we know are good variables. Here we're monitoring remote users to help with IT support. And in this, you can get a real good idea of your total machine count, the number of days this has been running, the number of hours it's been running, but you can also look at the last boot time, you can look at the RAM percentage being taken, you can look at the number of page faults, CPU being consumed in that environment, the latency, and you can drill down into any of these areas and again, head off problem areas before they become show-stopping things. So the items in red you may want to take a look at. The items in yellow you may want to take a look at as well. The ones in green are indeed good known values. Here's another report from Stratosphere UX that helps you in monitoring remote users. Here you get a good idea on the user count, the overall work from home user experience score and trend. And you can see other things like the destination name that they've had in here, the destination port, latency average, jitter. And this is a key thing in many virtual environments is jitter, and knowing what that is so you know the quality of the user experience. Other core value data is also helpful, and you can drill down as deep as you wish. This is just a sampling of some of the reports that you find in Stratosphere UX. How are you working from home? You can have yourself or your users shout out and show us, and we'll send you some free things for taking a look at our webinar today. Just post a picture on Facebook or Twitter of your home office. Add some tags in for hashtag liquidware, hashtag work from home. We'll take a look at those, and we'll likely send you some free stuff. We'll also give you a follow. If you have any questions from today's presentation, feel free to reach out to info or sales at liquidware.com or visit our website, www.liquidware.com, where you'll also find fully functioning trial software of all the things we talked about today, and you'll be able to stand those up and start your proof of concept within moments of seeing today's webinar. Thank you again, and thanks again to Actual Media.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to have our poll question up on the screen. One of the things I mentioned early on, a couple of things I mentioned early on in this event. One is the need for questions. We really do want your questions. There's some great questions coming in to the Q&A that I'm going to be talking about shortly here around work from home, internet connectivity, and things like that. They're really fantastic discussions. So there'll be more coming on that. There's also going to be a poll at the end of this event. I'm going to be actually putting a slide up with a link to the poll, because if you can't stay for the entire event, which we hope you can, but we really do want to get your feedback. And we will be offering a one lucky winner of the poll respondent. That's 5 questions. It's really quick. It's not even 5. Maybe that's 5. I don't know. A $50 gift card that we'll choose at random probably at the end of the day today. To get some feedback on the webinar format for today. That's a little bit different than our normal MegaCast and EcoCast event series. So before we move on to our next presenter, I'm going to leave this slide up for just a second more, and I'm going to put the link to the poll on the screen for just a minute. It will be a clickable link. You can also just type it into your browser if you want, but it's kind of a nasty link, unfortunately. We had a little bit of a technical issue that was not allowing us to do what we wanted to do with a short link. So leave this on the screen for a second. I'm going to put the Gorilla Guide survey. That is a clickable link. We would really like your feedback. We have a number of additional presentations, so please don't leave. But we would like to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to fill out the survey, because it really is important information for us. We do take all of your feedback to heart. And this is the kind of information we use to make our events even stronger. We really do love doing these events for our audience. And with a slightly different format today, we'd really like to get your thoughts on what you think so far. And our next presentation is coming to us from a company called ConnectWise, with tools and tips for securing a remote workforce. And we're going to be hearing from Jason Ryers, who is the VP for Cybersecurity Initiatives at ConnectWise. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason.
All right. Thanks, Scott, for that warm intro. As you mentioned, I'm Jay Ryerson. I'm VP of Cybersecurity Initiatives at ConnectWise. And today we actually want to talk about securing your remote workforce. And kind of give you some current things to think about, and some what's coming next type of scenarios around that remote workforce that you're all dealing with today. So we're going to dive into that securing your remote workforce first. And I want you to think about this from the perspective of, when this whole thing started, none of us really realized just how we were going to be where we are today Like none of us could have imagined that we'd be locked down like we are. And most of us scrambled to put our remote workforce out there, enable either our clients or our staff to actually be able to work remotely. And so now that we've rushed through that process and now you've got them out there and maybe working, maybe not, there's a few things I want you guys to think about. When we rushed out, you may have bought a bunch of equipment, you may have been deploying onto BYOD devices. I doubt that cybersecurity was actually a major topic around that space. So now's a really good time to go back and have those conversations with your teams and your end users and your clients to talk to them about the weaknesses that are now exist in the world and what we can all do working towards securing that actual workforce. If you are truly technical and have access to those things, turn on the logging, turn up the ability to see and provide visibility into what your remote users are doing to make sure that they aren't creating new holes and new problems for you in that process. And ultimately, work with your team to understand what you can do to go back now and make those connections more secure. A few things that have come up that have been topics, in the ConnectWise world, include things like, again, what do we do to create problems? How do we fix that? You may want to hold some live security awareness training content for your teams. Put on some company-wide or client-facing webinars around that. And we've actually gone so far as to record some and make them available to you guys to use along with the deck, that you can either play our videos or you can actually, take our deck and deliver it to your users, directly yourself. We've got a really cool safer at home remote workers guide that kind of informs them as to, what good looks like and what they should be responsible for and thinking about while they're working remotely. And one other question that came up that's really interesting is that in many cases, we have heard that as part of your enabling a remote workforce, you might be giving them a company VoIP phone, a voice over IP phone, and make sure that you consider the E911 issues. Update those configurations, because if a user has your company phone on their desk at home and you didn't change the E911, they literally could hit 911 and the ambulance or police or whoever are going to show up at the wrong address. And so that's on you to make sure you're thinking through those kinds of things. And I'm sure you've got a list of issues bigger than that. Outside of that, in the ConnectWise world, we've actually built out this website dedicated to helping you optimize and secure your remote workforce. We're giving you content that you can use with your users to teach them how it fits and how it works. We put access into those webinars and those pieces so that you have access to that information. Those slide decks, legal issues, lots of things that you guys can actually think about that will help make sure your workforce is actually secure. Now, in our world, it was actually quite easy because our partners were actually able to leverage the ConnectWise Control remote access tool. It's a tool that helps IT professionals access and manage remote machines, but also has the ability to check a box and enable your users to work from their work device at home or from another BYOD device. To give you an idea of how much growth we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a 652% increase in our partners using our cloud-based remote workforce features. That's a staggering growth rate. But for most of our partners, there's the ability to check the box and enable that functionality for their clients or those end users. We've also seen a 220% increase in the number of partners that are now using this. So we've been able to scale and handle that growth and really make it easy for the IT community to deliver remote work capabilities to their staff. Now, kind of moving on beyond that, there's some new challenges when you have remote workforces that we have to think about. In our world, we've all talked about backups, and we know what RPO and RTO are, that recovery point objective and recovery time objectives in that world. But what does it mean now that you're backing up and you're dealing with users that are working remotely? Are their profiles syncing back to servers? Is that all in place? How have you accommodated that? You should be thinking about that in your world as part of that overall strategy around securing that workforce. When we look at resiliency and what it actually means, what happens if a ransomware attack happens and now you've got users spread across town that you've got to be able to access and deal with? Tools like ConnectWise Control actually give us access to that, the ability to work on those types of issues. How are you backing up that remote workforce? What are your temporary backup procedures you've got to put in place? And again, what have you told your clients about that process and what that's actually going to look like? A few common things that we're talking to partners about, you may have enabled RDP. Please put a VPN in place first. Don't leave RDP open directly to the internet. That's not good, and it's just asking for trouble when it comes to cybersecurity issues. Think about that recovery effort. If a server goes down or if the users go down, how are you going to work on that? Maybe even tabletop exercise with your team. An exercise we did yesterday with a partner was as simple as we had their entire technical team on a call, and I just gave them a scenario. Hey, XYZ customer just went down, and we have no idea what's going on. What are we going to do? What's that going to look like? And they were scratching their heads like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it from that perspective, because now we've got this remote workforce, and maybe there's 30, 40, 50 machines that are in 40 or 50 or 60 different locations. And that's going to require a whole different layer of resiliency thought process in that process, in this overall issue that we're dealing with when it comes to COVID. Work on that continuous improvement plan, and hopefully you'll never need to use it again, but having it in place now before bad things happen would certainly be good. That really kind of comes to the last part, and that's the planning ahead cycle. What is this going to look like going forward, once we can actually go back to work? First off, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to say, hey, I like working from home or from a remote location, and I want to keep doing that. What access did you provide to people that now you've got to go back and close? What tools did you license that maybe you want to unlicense, or that you want to keep licensed, now you want to start billing for them and collecting for those kinds of things? And just what else is on your list of what it looks like? A few things I'd recommend, obviously, is to document what worked, build out those improvements so that your processes and decisions are really easy. When it comes to unwinding all of this, plan that reverse out strategy. See, we had no plan for everybody has to go remote, but now we've got to figure out how to go back and say, okay, now how are we going to undo this and do it in scale? Those are certainly issues. And go back and document what you did for your clients. Every client may be a little different. They have different needs, different requirements, different risk. And so you want to map out what you did so that you make sure you unwind correctly when it's time to actually do that. So from a delivery standpoint, ConnectWise is here to help. We're doing it in a lot of different ways. Here's that link again to that remote worker content if you want to go out and use that white labeled content to help talk to your clients and your end users. We've got the ConnectWise control offer there at the bottom, where we're actually providing access to partners to actually access and use the ConnectWise control, put it into their business and help enable some of their remote workforce. And from a security perspective, we've got a Fortify for Endpoint solution where we're making 100 licenses available to you and your teams to secure your remote workforce. And those licenses are good through the end of June. So I am Jay Ryerson, VP of Cybersecurity Initiatives with ConnectWise. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you so much, Jay, for this great presentation. We're going to put our poll question up for you with a reminder to our audience to fill out our survey that we'll also be showing you a link for again shortly, as well as at the end of the event. We do want to get your feedback on today's event. And again, if you have questions, please make sure you ask them, because we are really excited to take questions. And like I said, there's a great product. In fact, let me talk about the discussion going on a little bit. It's all around the last mile and home stuff. And one of the people here basically said, adding to the comment regarding work at home and internet connectivity speeds, issues with kids gaming, streaming, Netflix, etc. I am noting that router manufacturers have now been putting out quality of service tweaks to their systems. For example, my Asus router, I just updated the firmware, and they now include a work from home QoS preset to maximize the accessibility for the work from home user. So if you have some stuff already laying around that you're using, do firmware updates. This is good practice anyway from a security perspective, but it also has some potential feature capability that you should be looking at. And if you don't have a router that you control, it's controlled by your ISP, contact them. See if there's a firmware update that adds new capabilities or whatever, and go from there. Our next presenter is someone we heard from before, but we're going to hear from again, but in a different context. It's Ruben again. He's going to be talking about tips from working from home. He's not doing this as a vendor presentation. He's doing this as an independent expert that has worked from home for a very long time. I've known Ruben for years, and he's always been working from home, as far as I know. So he'll have some great tips for all of us as we continue to navigate this maze.
Hey, welcome to this session, Ruben's expert tips to work from home. For me, it's normal to work from home, and for many, it will become the new normal to work from home more often than done in the past. I really believe it's great to help each other in good and tough times, and important to share experiences to work from home, so we'll all benefit. Hence this presentation, my expert tips to work from home. I work from home for the past 5+ years full-time, and I created this poster with my 15 tips to work from home. You can download the high-quality version of this poster. I will share the URL at the end of this session. You can share them, you can use them yourself. I use them myself quite often as well to remind me, like, hey, I need to do better. For instance, in block family time, or for instance, in exercise more often. So these are my 15 tips to work from home. The first one is create your own work routine. For me, during the day, I start around 8 a.m. and end around 10 p.m. with gym, exercise, walk the dog, lunch, and dinner with family in between. When you start the day, do the challenging task first. Don't start with catching up on social media with social media. You'll waste an hour for sure. Block notifications and close social media when you want to get stuff done. Another tip is write down the goals for the day. Don't create your top 20 and expect at the end of the day all 20 are finished. It doesn't work for me. I create my top 3, my top 5, and focus on that. I use my large glass board, my whiteboard, which is available for drafting, prioritization, to-do list, and notes. And that's where I write down my top 3 for that particular day. Right now, I'm standing. I'm using an adjustable standing desk. I use it a lot. I spend roughly 80% of my time just standing behind the desk. It helps me really to stay focused and gives me much more energy than just sitting the whole day behind the desk. Also, make sure there is a dedicated office space. If you have the luxury of a room, great. If you don't have a dedicated room, which you can use for work from home as like a remote office room, if you don't have that, I would say try to really pick a place in your house and target that place as this is my air quote office space. For me, it also helps when this place is clean, no clutter, it's organized, it's comfortable, lighting, no noise, well set up. For me, that is important to really stay focused and get stuff done. Also spend money on the right and good IT or good equipment, multiple screens, large screens, multiple laptops, desk, cameras, microphone, large mouse pad, things like that. And that's also a great excuse to buy the equipment you always wanted. Just a hint, check with the employer what can be expensed as well. You never know. Sometimes there is a budget to expense when you work from home, maybe multiple screens or an USB 3 hub or extra keyboard or whatever can be expensed. Always good to double check. For me, an external keyboard and mouse is much more productive than laptop keyboard and trackpad, so I use that. Multiple clocks is what I use. I have an international role. It helps when I know what the different time zones are, so I use multiple clocks just in front of me. Also, servers, Intel NUCs, NAS, storage devices, network equipment are all in a different room, so noise-free when needed. And talking about noise-free, I use a noise-canceling headset a couple of hours a day just to create my own cocoon, to isolate myself from random family noise so that I can focus. When I set up video calls or when I have meetings, I always my rule is like camera is always on, even when the others aren't used to do so. It helps me. I expect others as well, but it helps me to level up a different level of engagement when the camera is on. Also, in sort of managing expectations to family members, closed door means meeting is happening. So family knows, please don't disturb when the door is closed. Exercise often. Right now, I cannot go physically to the gym, so I do my workouts in my home office or in home. I go for a run or some other exercises outdoors a couple of times a week. Also, so buying a dog is also a great excuse to go out. And my family, we have a dog, so I do both exercise and walk the dog. Also, block time in your agenda is a great tip so that others know when you're not available. Dinner time, lunchtime, whatever makes sense for you. And use this block time for time with the family. Also, block time, final tip is block time in the agenda to spend on non-work related activities. Could be reading a book, could be maybe investigating technology stuff, if it's like non-work related, or even if it's work related, doesn't matter. For me, work and hobby is connected to each other. It's tough, not always easy, sometimes tough to differentiate between both, and that's fine for me. So I block time to investigate on benchmarking or on GPUs or on cloud or whatever I feel comfortable and whatever makes sense for me or for you. So these are my 15 tips in a nutshell to work from home. Sometimes people ask, hey, what kind of tools do you use to get stuff done? This is a photo I just shot from my desk, my standing desk right now. This one here. You see the 3 clocks. You see the 2 white lights in front of me, 2 screens, MacBook Hub, Elgato Stream Deck, Elgato lights. You see the nice plant on the right side. So this is my setup. You don't see my glassboard, but well, it's just a glassboard. And these are the tools I use on a daily basis to get work done. I wouldn't pick everyone one by one, but well, you get an overview of what is happening here. If you want to see more details and read more about it, all good. It's in this LinkedIn post I created a couple of weeks ago. Search my name. There aren't that much Ruben Spruits in the world, so pretty sure you will see my name in LinkedIn. And the blog post I wrote in Pulse is my top tips to work from home, including a poster to share or to print. With that, thanks for listening. If you have feedback, please feel free to reach out. If you have other tips and you want to share them, please just leave them as a remark, as a note in the LinkedIn post, or if you want to share them through email, feel free to do so. Thanks for listening. Have a great time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ruben, as always. Before we continue on to our next presentation, I want to bring the slide up again for our survey. If you haven't already, please fill out our survey. We'll be bringing this link up again at the end of the presentation, and to try to maximize the return that we get from a response perspective. Our next presenter is from EG Innovations. We'll be hearing from John Worthington, who is the Director of Customer Success, and he'll be talking about managing the work from home explosion.
All right, thanks, Scott. What I'd like to do is just share some quick tips on how EG Innovations can help you manage what is becoming a work from home explosion for everyone. And I've worked from home on and off for almost 30 years now. So I thought before I started, I'd share a few personal tips I've learned. Most of these I've learned the hard way as well. And the first is pretty simple. Get a room. The dining room, the kitchen, or the TV room is really not an office. Find yourself a space you can call your own, and preferably with a door that can close. Second one, pretty simple, go to work. The problem with this one is you can get to your home office at 6 a.m. in the morning in your pajamas, right? But when you find you're still in your pajamas at 8:30 at night, it's time to rethink your work habits, right? And this relates to my third tip, which is go home. In an emergency situation like the one we're facing, the workload is constantly increasing. And it's critically important that you be able to hand off to someone and take a break particularly if you're an on-call type of worker. And one of the most important habits you're going to need to learn is the ability to turn work off. And I'll be honest, I continue to struggle with this even after more than 2 decades working at home. So again, the irony of remembering to go home when you're a work from home employee doesn't escape me. But I think of all the tips I've heard, this is really the most important of all. And the pandemic is making this even worse. So take a walk, stay socially distant, but get some fresh air or exercise if you can. So with that little introduction, a few tips, we'll give you some other things that EG Innovations is doing to assist our customers. The digital workspace, whether it's based on Citrix, VMware, Horizon, or AWS or something else, it actually needs to work, right? Your employees still need to be productive. And the first thing they're going to do every day, and in some cases multiple times during the day, is log on. And so if this is slow or doesn't work, it sets the tone right off the bat. And of course, they have to be able to use their applications and desktops as well. And IT are facing significant challenges when the users they have to support suddenly increase exponentially. So any new or increased monitoring tool, while welcome, needs to get up and running quickly. And there's a couple of ways that EG is helping customers today. We've always offered a free logon simulator for Citrix, VMware, and others. And we can take a quick look of that. What this does is simulate the exact same steps that a user goes through when they log on to their workspace. And it tracks every step of the logon process proactively and can give you a heads up that, hey, users are going to experience logon issues, so you can address it before they're impacted. So that's one of the things that we can do. The other thing that we can do is we've got a cloud-based service called EG Express Cloud. And this allows you to monitor not just simulated users, but real user monitor performance as well. And again, for Citrix, VMware, and really any digital service. So what I thought I would do is just give you a quick sneak peek at some of these, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, so what we're looking at is a synthetic monitoring dashboard, and this is showing Citrix logon simulations. And what you see here is the simulations that we're running. It shows that we've got major issues on 2 simulations. And as I said earlier, we track every step in the logon process. So web logon availability and duration, enumeration availability, application desktop launch and duration. And if we were getting any issues, I can use this detailed diagnosis icon, just click on it, and I can get a quick graphic that shows me every step in the logon process and which step is causing the slowness. In this case, it's application desktop launch. In our other example, I believe it was authentication. Yeah, so if you're having maybe Active Directory issues in authentication, it's going to immediately show you where to look. So this logon simulation is one way that you can proactively monitor the user experience. So this is an example of the EG Express Cloud for Citrix homepage. This is a purpose-built monitor based on EG Express Cloud for Citrix digital workspaces. And what you're seeing here is the homepage. This shows you an at-a-glance view of the health of your digital workspace. It shows you consumption information in terms of number of sessions, number of concurrent sessions, average latency, and so forth, a little bit about user load. It shows us session quality and logon, new logons and logon duration. We also provide you a unique user experience index, which is based upon either Citrix or VMware best practice and EG Innovations more than 2 decades of field experience. We break down alerts into user impacting and potentially user impacting, so you can address the user impacting alerts first. We give you some top application information as well as a health score of the resource control and access layers. A couple other things that we can do is look at user experience. So if a user is experiencing issues, you can look up that user, click on that, and you will be shown a session topology view. So this is the actual topology, the path that this user is following, and it'll highlight which in this case, we've got poor connection strength. I can also look at the logon time breakdown in real time, both on the server and client side, things that group policy processing, and even things like workspace environment management, app layering, and so forth, or all supported out of the box. And one final thing before I wrap it up is reporting. There is a wealth of application out-of-the-box reports. This is a user experience report. This EG Express Cloud can get up and running and start populating these out-of-that-box reports in about 15 minutes. There's also, this is one we found customers like, this active idle time report. This allows customers to look at their users and find out what the difference between active and idle time is. So if a user's not logged on, you can find out they may be having a technical or a personal issue for some reason they're not able to get their work done. So that was a quick view of some of the things that we can do to assist you. And again, you can just go to our website and log on to either the logon simulator and or Express Cloud and start assuring logon experiences, monitor real users, and so forth. And you can start monitoring. In each case, you can get these up and running in less than 15 minutes. So that is our few tips, and I'll pass the ball back to you and ask everyone to stay safe.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll put our next poll question up on the screen. If you'd like to hear more about EG Innovations and what they can do to help work from home and remote technologies, remote workforce technologies, please answer the question. Our next presentation, while we're waiting for the poll to finish, will be coming from Metallic, which is a Commvault venture. We'll be hearing from David No, who is the Vice President for Metallic Products and Engineering, and they're going to be bringing us a great overview of what Metallic is. It's a bit of a departure for, if you thought you knew Commvault, take a look at Metallic, and you may rethink that a little bit. It's an interesting solution. And while we have the poll question up, there was some other stuff that came into the chat that was interesting. For any of you that use Microsoft Teams and you were jealous about Zoom backgrounds, that is now available in Microsoft Teams. I'm not sure if it's fully deployed yet, but you can actually have backgrounds in Teams because we know that's a critical feature. So we can look like we're on the bridge of the enterprise or something like that, or whatever it happens to be. And so that's, if you use any of those collaboration tools, those backgrounds can just make things kind of fun. And sometimes one of the pieces of advice is don't have a messy background behind you in your home office. But if you have a background that you can just replace, that makes that a whole lot easier. So we're going to move on now to our next presenter. As I mentioned, that's Commvault. Then we're going to have our next Q&A. Then we have just 2 more presentations after that. And then we'll be giving away our final gift cards and ending our presentation in just a little while here. Thank you for sticking with us.
Hi, I'm David No, and I'm VP of Products and Engineering for Metallic at Commvault. Today I'll share how we can help IT professionals with what's kind of top of mind right now, which is remote workers in this new reality we're all forced to work in. Together, we'll review the importance of data protection and what to consider for endpoint. I'll share a free offer, how easy it is to get started, and I'll even do a quick demo of the product. Backup today is really more relevant than ever, particularly in the environment that we have with ransomware and other security threats. And businesses that we found, particularly mid-sized businesses that might have more constrained IT resources and staffing, are suffering from inadequate data protection coverage. It's really quite surprising. And it's really putting them at risk for data loss and loss of productivity. And this is particularly true with the current surge in remote workers, people who are not used to working remotely, not used to having their own laptop or desktop at home, on which they're spending their entire day. With the recent increase in remote workers, it only exacerbates the problem of endpoints being particularly vulnerable. They're responsible for the vast majority of data breaches. And so really it's about two things: reducing risk and increasing productivity. How do you protect against ransomware, not just in case, not just preventing it, but also what happens if it does make it through your defenses? And how to make sure that your backup infrastructure is not vulnerable to those things. Getting data back quickly is as important as backing it up. And also, when considering these solutions, looking at how do you deploy and manage this solution on a daily basis, and how you minimize impact of that solution on your infrastructure are also critical considerations. So with all these considerations in mind, we developed Metallic, which is a pure SaaS offering from Commvault. It's built on Commvault technology. Commvault has more than 800 patents, has been around for more than 20 years, and is well known for data protection innovation. And so taking this technology and delivering it via Metallic as a SaaS solution really brings that power to our customers. It's available in the United States and Canada today. Today, we're specifically talking about endpoint backup recovery of all the offerings that Metallic has. It is simple to set up. It is simple to deploy, and it is easy to buy. There's no capital expenditure required. You can pay for it over time. There's wizards in order to help you get set up with smart defaults. We back up on a very frequent basis to make sure that all the data is protected in a timely fashion. And because it's a SaaS solution, in this case, Metallic includes unlimited storage. It comes with the cost of the service. And we provide 1 year of retention, so you don't have to worry about losing your important data. How does it work? As I mentioned, all the components of Metallic are in the cloud. And for the endpoint solution in particular, all you do is download a small package that gets installed on each endpoint. Metallic has more than one offering. There's one for Office 365 that backs up Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and email. There's also Metallic Core, which backs up things like file shares and file servers and VMs and SQL Server. And of course, we're talking about endpoint today. The other two offerings, Office 365 as well as Core Backup and Recovery, are also very important when talking about remote work, particularly when talking about VDI, things like Windows Virtual Desktop, where you can protect data that's not just on the endpoints, but is accessed by workers that are working remotely. Now that you know why endpoint backup is critical and what characteristics to look for, right? Metallic can help you with all of these concerns. We have encryption built into the software to make sure that it's secure. It is remotely hosted to make sure that it's reliable and not vulnerable to on-premises attack. It is very scalable to thousands and thousands of laptops per customer, not just overall, but per customer. And it works with your Windows, Linux, or Macintosh desktops and laptops for maximum coverage. And finally, it's really easy to get started on it. You can get up and going with the solution in less than 15 minutes. We're really excited to help IT professionals with the challenges that they're facing today. With free protection for laptops and desktops through September 1st of 2020. It's for up to 1,000 endpoints with unlimited Azure storage, thanks to our partners at Microsoft, with no strings attached and no commitment required. Again, there's no cost during the period at all and no obligation to continue at the end of the offer. And it includes full access to all the features of the product, as well as our first-class customer support. It's really easy to get access to the offer. Just go to our webpage, metallic.io/endpoint offer, enter your email, and activate your account. It's that simple. Download the client, and away you go. Now, let's take a look at a demo of the hub. This is the Metallic Hub. As you can see, there's Core, Office 365, and Endpoint here. And we present things in an easy to view, easy to manage interface, which gives you access to everything you need, including support and documentation. You can even chat with someone live. From here, for Endpoint, you can go ahead and download the packages you need to install the software on the clients. You can add users manually. You can configure SAML as your identity provider for single sign-on, and you can manage backup content. In order to do a restore, it's very simple. You can click on the laptop that you want or the desktop that you want and get a summary of everything that's happening with that laptop and its current status. You can see when the last backup was, how much data was backed up, even where it is. Restore is as simple as a few clicks. Simply browse to the data you want to restore, and the data will come back in place, or you can download it. To recap, we've covered why data protection for endpoints is so important. It's not just enough to protect against ransomware and malware. It's also really important to remember what happens in case something does occur and you do experience corruption and you do have data loss. Visit our website for the free offer, and thanks again.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation. We're going to put our next poll question up on the screen for a minute here, and we're going to start with our panel. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. We have some great questions that have come in, and we're going to actually start with Liquidware. The question that we have from the audience is, what VDI brokers is the Liquidware solution compatible with?
Hey, this is Jason Smith from Liquidware. Great question. Thanks for attending today. Liquidware works with all VDI brokers. We really depend on Windows to launch. So if you're running Windows, even locally, physical desktops, Citrix, VMware, Amazon Workspaces, we even support AppStream, and other platforms that support Windows. So any and all is the answer. Thank you.
Perfect. This is for ConnectWise. So Jay, this is for you. I'm struggling with mobile device management. How can you help me with that?
That's a great question. So mobile device management, there's a handful of products out there. In our world, obviously, from a remote workforce, if you're trying to support a remote user, we're going to look at the IBM Mass 360 platform as a simple and efficient way for you to have access to it. The other one that we see from partners is they might use some of the Meraki MDM capabilities.
Perfect. And EG Innovations, can you monitor applications running in the cloud? This is for you, John.
Yes, we support AWS and Azure and support native applications running in any of those clouds, including IBM Cloud as well.
Excellent. We have a question for you, David, about Metallic, and sort of a meta question. If I'm already a Commvault user, what does Metallic add for me?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. So Metallic as a service takes the power of Commvault technology that you're already using and delivers it as a service. And for something like our endpoint solutions, it includes things like storage. And for endpoints, it's unlimited with a retention of a year. It also includes the infrastructure required to run the service and all the management and other things, but still gives you the freedom to leverage the technology as you see fit.
Excellent. We have another one for ConnectWise that's come in. And can you give me an example of a common task that's automated with ConnectWise?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, we've got thousands of scripts written across our different tool sets, you know, from manage to automate to command, even into the security space. So whether it be simple things like automating patching, automating installs of tools like Control to help set up and enable remote workforces, all the way through deployment of software. We can really cover a wide spectrum.
Excellent, thank you. Our next one is for you, John, and the question is, do you simulate multi-factor authentication logins?
Yes. Yes, yes, we do, and you can actually get Logon Simulator for free as a cloud service right on our website.
Perfect. And the last question before I ask a more general question of the group is for Commvault. For this, so this is for you, David. When I back data up with Metallic, where is the data stored?
Sure. So we leverage Microsoft Azure today for Metallic storage. So for like the free endpoint offer, our partner Microsoft is helping us out by contributing to the infrastructure and the financials to help us bring that offer to market.
Perfect. And I have a general question I'm going to ask everybody. It's a little bit of a twist on the one I've been asking because I want to get the other side of the equation. So when organizations that might be either struggling with deploying remote workforce technologies to help people work from home, or that are doing it but didn't quite expect to be doing it to the extent that they're doing it, what one tip would you give them from a policy/procedure or technical standpoint that they really need to keep in mind? And David, let's start with you on this one.
Sure. I think it's very important to understand that a lot of the workforce that's now working remotely is not used to it or never intended to work from home. And so, the things that you would expect of people where they would behave, in such a way to make remote working secure and manageable, they're just not thinking about. So rolling out the right tools, rapidly in an easy to use way, like via SaaS, is really a great consideration for those companies to make sure their endpoints are secured and protected.
And Jason, what are your thoughts on that question?
Thank you. Yes, we've seen people taking different approaches, anything from just simply making sure you're on a VPN to remoting into another desktop. So a lot of organizations are going to do whatever they can to get by this current crisis that we're in and to help their users work from home. But I would say that we see this as a trend going forward, that most organizations, just as they would love to have a secure enterprise for desktops, they're going to make sure that they have a method to work from home. We don't know when this might spin back up again in the fall, heaven forbid, but I would say plan for the future and do what it takes to get by right now, but look for a long-term solution. And we find that organizations that rely on virtual desktops or emerging solutions like Microsoft WVD, those provide a full desktop experience in a secure way.
Yeah, I agree that this is going to be a paradigm shift, permanent probably. John, what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I can't really add too much to that. I agree as well. I think you want to be sure and do the planning, particularly from a user group perspective. Understand your user requirements before you get too deep into the technology, and make sure you do the proper planning. But I agree with everything that everyone else said as well.
Perfect. Jay?
A lot of great things already covered there. I'd probably suggest everybody takes a step back. We've seen the last 3 weeks where there have been increases. I think our counts were 650+% increase in people enabling the remote workforce area. So I think it's time to go back now and start looking at what we did, what worked, what didn't. Be very, very concerned about asset and equipment creep. That you're not allowing users to move from machine to machine in a way that you don't have some control of the data and responsibility for the data. And then just as I mentioned in my session, be prepared to unwind it, which means you may also need to be prepared to turn it on and off at will as these people scale.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your insight and wisdom into helping our audience better understand and navigate the choppy waters that we're finding all of ourselves in. We have
thanks
our
for
next.
time.
You're welcome. Thank you. We have our next prize drawing, and then we're going to go into our final 2 presentations of this event. So our next gift card number 5, is going to Krista Riley of Washington, D.C., where my son was born. So Krista, we will be reaching out to you after the event. And gift card number 6 is going to Mike Amaya of Michigan. Again, we'll be reaching out to you right after the event. We'll be doing 2 more presentations and then a short Q&A period again, and then following up with 2 gift cards, and then sending you on to the survey, and hopefully you'll fill that out for an additional chance to win another $50 gift card. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hive.io, where we're going to be hearing from Yama Habibzal. I apologize, who is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Hive.io.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yama Habibzai, and I'm with Hive.io. Thank you so much for having me here today. But I wanted to first cover and talk about what we call the new virtual economy, right? We've got millions of people stuck at home during this coronavirus outbreak. And where it's going to lead in the future, I think I can speak for everybody that no one really knew that this was going to hit us the way it has. So based on the experiences, what's going to happen going forward? We believe a lot of organizations will have no choice but to prepare for a possible outbreak like this again in the future. So what does this mean to an organization's computing and networking, security, and all the aspects of the different things that they have to consider when more and more of their workforce is working remotely? Now, for those who remember, not too long ago, the birth of the computer, right? Where essentially you had a single computer being exactly that, a glorified calculator sitting on its own, an individual using it. Later on, these computers started connecting and networking with each other, communicating with each other. So that gave birth to a network, right? So you've got all these computers connected and communicating with each other. And we found out very quickly that these computers became very expensive and networks could not scale with having millions of computers just connected to each other. That gave birth to client-server technology, where you have machines that are now connecting to a server. Classic example would be Microsoft Exchange. You got an Exchange server running in a data center. People are using email. All emails go into central place and then get distributed to other places. As that happened, more and more servers became connected to the networks, to the data centers, and all of a sudden we're running out of space. It's costing quite a bit to cool and heat mostly cool these data centers. And all of a sudden, another innovation came around, which was this whole virtualization technology. This allowed us to pack more and more computers or virtual computers inside a physical computer and save on cost and space. So to this day, that's where we are at. When you use most of the applications today, they connect to a backend server that is in a virtual system somewhere in the cloud, right? Either a hybrid, on-prem, or public cloud. Now, as far as where the world is going, one of the downsides of today's technology is that people still to this day continue to have a need an expensive desktop. I've got a MacBook Pro right here, which is quite expensive. Dell computers, you try to go buy a computer, any good computer will cost you upwards of a couple $100, right? At least $1,000 or more. And as people go remote, organizations cannot afford to not only lose the inefficiencies of working remote, but also the high cost of desktop computing. And where we believe at Hive.io the future resides is this concept of, in the future, there is no computer, but a single window called a browser. You've got a browser, and that's all you need. What we see as the birth or a rebirth of VDI, which is virtual desktop infrastructure. And this is where the world is going. Let me just switch here now and share my screen. Hive.io is a VDI company. By the way, that's my email address. Feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, any questions. I'd be happy to communicate and engage with you. So what we do, we deliver the most advanced VDI platform in the world. VDI is not new, it's been around, but it's been complicated. It's been hard to deploy. And to get that single window for your users in a cost-efficient way, VDI is the way to go. And in the future, we believe VDI is the only way to scale. So what we do at Hive.io is what, our claim to fame is that we've packaged the VDI technology end-to-end, the virtualization, the storage, the networking, orchestration, all of these technologies into a single fabric. 8 minutes to install, 30 minutes to configure, less than 1 hour to deploy, all packaged together. Now, how does this compare to existing VDI solutions? Well, you need technologies from multiple companies, and it will take you not hours, but weeks and months to get going, and in the end, still not function as well as it should. You also see this intelligent message bus down below, which is unique to us. All the components write to a message bus that eventually you can tell exactly which applications are being used, what's not being used. When it comes to corporate and regulatory compliance, you have that information at your disposal. The other thing that's unique about Hive.io, which is the swarm theory. Like a beehive, literally bees taking care of each other, building a hive that's strong and sturdy. The VDI from Hive.io, based on swarm theory, actually utilizes resources and scales the infrastructure such that if an individual is needing a lot of desktop computing memory and CPU because they're running multiple applications and somebody else is not doing anything, it will dynamically take resources away from that individual and give it to the person who needs it, or the desktop that needs it. And in this way, this is our UI, you can see in real time as the fabric changes and the right resources get to the right people. So very unique to us. One single install, but you also have one contract, one company to deal with, not multiple technologies that you have to glue together. It takes 1 hour to deploy. We've essentially helped companies from multiple people running a VDI platform to just a single individual, because the system takes care of itself. It has what we call self-healing capabilities. All the technologies, the VDI, the virtual server infrastructure, the storage, all being into one single fabric, and then one management console that tells you all that, or gives you visibility into all of that technology in one place. In terms of deployment, customers have the ability to deploy in the cloud, which means they don't touch or install anything, and the users get access to VDI within hours or less. And then the on-premises deployment, which is the customer owns the entire VDI infrastructure. Now, earlier I talked about getting to virtual desktops very quickly, or using a single window, right? So you've got this one user able to run very powerful applications through a couple of different mechanisms that we have. The person has accessibility. One is the traditional desktops, that's right in the middle there, on the top, the virtual desktops. And then for certain users where a physical desktop is sitting at a building that you need to access, this happens in the government a lot, where computers are not allowed to be taken off premise. How do you access those machines in a secure fashion as part of the Hive Fabric security, fenced around that? Well, you can do that too. So you can actually access physical desktops, you can run virtual desktops, and access physical servers, all within the same platform in a highly secure fashion from a single vendor, as we mentioned earlier. If you look at, we talked about the present, past, and future. If you look at the future, running large number of people or having large number of people running desktops is going to be very complicated and expensive the way we are functioning right now in the world. So there's got to be an easier way. And the way to do it is to Cost savings, VDI doesn't require those expensive machines to be purchased. The technology in the data center can run in any x86 machine. The IT administrators have full visibility across application usage, corporate guidelines adhered to, and essentially you get more done at a fraction of the cost. And this is the future. The future down the road will be that there are no laptops or expensive machines. You just buy yourself a cheap window to a server farm that has all the technology that you need to run and make any of those low-cost machines behave like a $3,000 laptop. And that's pretty cool. That's it for me. My time's up. Thank you so much again for listening to me. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll personally respond to you. And I hope you stay safe, healthy, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.
And that was Hive.io. Thank you very much for that great presentation. We are going to be moving on very shortly to our next presentation of the day and our last regular presentation before we have a Q&A panel discussion to take some more of your questions. So if you have any final questions, not final in the final sense, but final questions for today about what you've heard about work from home, about creating a work from home policy, what have you, please make sure you ask the question using the questions button on your screen. Our next presenter comes to us from a company called Glyptodon. This is for Mike Jumper. He's a CEO and co-founder. Glyptodon is, I think it's an ancient armadillo, if I'm not mistaken, and it's kind of an interesting approach using open source to enable remote connectivity. We're going to leave this poll question up for just a few more seconds, and then we're going to move on to Glyptodon for our final presentation. And we thank the audience for being here with us today. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play to get our next presentation going.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Mike Jumper, co-founder and CEO at Glyptodon, and I would like to thank ActualTech for providing us this opportunity to talk about remote work. Before I get into the meat of this presentation, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Apache Guacamole and the company that we founded to support it. I started working on what would become Apache Guacamole more than a decade ago. At the time, it was purely a way to access my home computer from work without circumventing my employer's strict rules regarding the firewall. The project began as a VNC client, but grew into a multi-user, multi-protocol remote desktop gateway, and we founded the company Glyptodon to provide enterprise customers with support. Our company maintained Guacamole as an open source project before eventually donating it to the Apache Software Foundation. Apache Guacamole has since become widely used. It's been deployed by millions of people at organizations of all sizes, from mom and pop plumbing companies to some of the world's largest cloud providers. It provides a simple, secure, and reliable way for people to remotely access desktops with just a web browser. And at Glyptodon, we make it easy for enterprises to take advantage of Apache Guacamole and deliver remote desktops. So here's what we'll talk about for the next few minutes. First, we'll talk a bit about the advantages of remote desktops over traditional laptops and VPN. Then we'll go over some common issues and security considerations when deploying remote desktops. Of course, despite their advantages, most organizations don't use remote desktops, so we'll discuss the historical barriers to remote desktop adoption. We'll then address how Apache Guacamole overcomes these challenges, and we'll wrap up with a couple of brief real-world use case examples. Remote desktops, if deployed correctly, can provide a solution not only for security issues of working remotely, but also for many of the administrative headaches. For our part, we see a number of major advantages in remote desktops over traditional machines and VPNs, so much so that we do all our work, including coding a business, on remote desktops. We strongly believe in eating what we grow here. First, the administrative burden for deploying, supporting, and maintaining remote desktops is significantly less than it is for physical machines, especially at scale. It's all software, so there's never any need to touch an end user's laptop, which with everyone almost on lockdown is essentially impossible to do. As long as a remote desktop solution doesn't require an agent on endpoints, employees can use essentially any machine for access, including their personal laptop. Another advantage is security, which is a particularly big concern for companies who have suddenly had to provide remote access to everyone overnight. So long as the connection between the end user and the virtual desktop is secure, you can provide much stronger security in a remote desktop environment, since any actions an end user performs are executed behind the enterprise firewall. Plus, remote desktops encourage users to store data on the enterprise's network, where it can be properly backed up, secured, and more easily shared with users inside the company. If you're already using remote desktops or considering doing so, here are some tips to troubleshoot common issues. Concerning security, don't provide direct access to remote desktops via the internet. You need a gateway or a VPN in front of your remote desktop server. Ideally, remote desktops should not be directly reachable from the internet at all. Remote desktops should be isolated within private networks. You don't want people who aren't supposed to be accessing these machines to be able to do so. It's critical to keep your internal network isolated and limit it to people who truly need direct access. So make sure to configure remote desktop servers so that they accept connections only from networks authorized to establish those connections. Beyond security, people often run into trouble when attempting to use remote desktop features like audio input or audio output or device redirection, and where those features might not be enabled by default. When something isn't working as expected, it's a good idea to check that the feature isn't disabled by group policies and that any required services are running. If remote desktop services appear to not be working at all, it's also a good idea to verify that the remote desktop service is indeed reachable, particularly when expanding access to remote desktop. It's still critical to keep things as isolated as possible, but old firewall rules may be blocking access that should now be allowed. Of course, there have historically been significant barriers to the adoption of remote desktops. Otherwise, they'd be more widely deployed than they currently are. The biggest drawback of past solutions has been poor performance and instability. End users, especially executives, will rebel if they are forced to use a system that makes it harder for them to do their daily work. Another issue is many remote desktop solutions require IT to install a client on the end user's machine, which is a substantial administrative headache, especially if you're dealing with hundreds or thousands of devices. Security has been an issue with many platforms. As I said earlier, best practice is to never expose remote desktop services to the internet. Many solutions have shipped with serious vulnerabilities that would have dangerous consequences if exploited. VPNs have been a common solution to providing a secure connection, but as anyone who has worked with VPNs can tell you, that introduces a lot of cost and complexity and may tie end users to specific devices. Finally, proprietary remote desktop systems haven't been cheap. Given the complexity, poor performance, and instability that enterprise IT often encountered with these technologies, it's been hard to justify building out a remote desktop system instead of just providing employees with a standard laptop and VPN. So let's talk about Apache Guacamole and how it can overcome these barriers to provide the benefits that I described earlier. The community has made Apache Guacamole simple for the end user. So long as they're using a standard web browser, all they need to do is click a URL, enter credentials, and they're working on their remote desktop via a secure session. There's no client and no VPN. It's that easy. As a result, end users can use any machine they like, from personal laptops to tablets, mobile phones, or Chromebooks. Guacamole provides fast performance. In a nutshell, it takes a holistic view of all the updates it needs to send to the end user and analyzes the content of graphics to see which compression format will deliver the best performance. Further, there's an optimization layer that reorders and combines updates as they happen. The goal is to minimize processing on the browser side, which provides a faster experience. Apache Guacamole is stable, and it has to be. As I said, we use it on remote desktops for all our work. I often leave my remote desktop connected for days, even weeks, without any problems. As for security, Guacamole provides a central authenticated gateway with encryption in front of it that you can use to access remote desktops. All communication must go through this gateway, governed by administrative permission grants. Since Guacamole uses its own protocol, an RDP or VNC server that might otherwise be exploitable by specially crafted packets is invulnerable. And finally, because Apache Guacamole is open source, you don't have to take a vendor's word for anything. The source code is available for anyone to examine, and costs are considerably lower than they are for proprietary platforms. All kinds of organizations are using Apache Guacamole today, but I'll give you just two brief examples. The first is a large consumer device manufacturer that relies heavily on training labs, which is a fairly common use case. With training labs spread all over the world, providing direct access was difficult to maintain and confusing for users. With Apache Guacamole, the complex arrangement of training environments could be kept opaque, and instructions for accessing training environments could be kept simple. Only administrators need to be aware of the internal nature of the deployment. Since Guacamole's architecture allows for users' point of access to be local, with underlying remote desktop connections going over a faster internal network, access to training environments was effectively accelerated, and the result was incredibly responsive performance. In a different example, a large community college had originally used VPNs to connect instructors and other staff to their personal workstations when they were undergoing training off campus. Given how complex and expensive that was, both for IT and for end users, they searched for an open source solution and made the switch to Apache Guacamole. That was a small deployment, involving no more than a handful of people using remote desktops at any given time. But when the pandemic hit, they suddenly had to scale up to provide remote desktop access to more than 100 end users. Because Apache Guacamole is so easy to use, they're able to provide everyone with a high-performing remote desktop almost immediately. Apache Guacamole is available for anyone to use. It's open source and maintained by a very active, enthusiastic community. If you'd like dedicated support, we're also providing our Glyptodon Enterprise build and support for free during the pandemic. You get in touch, we'd be happy to help you get started.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We are going to launch our final poll question for our event today. And while that's up, I have the pleasure of talking to Yama. I messed up your last name. I apologize. Can you tell me how that's pronounced?
Habibzai. That's fine. Everybody kills it. It's okay.
And Mike Jumper, CEO and co-founder at Glyptodon.
Hello.
So let me start with you, Mike. Glyptodon, is that an ancient armadillo?
Yes, it is. A very large ancient armadillo.
Got it. It was one of the things we were trying to figure out exactly what the name was, and I assume it has something to do with security for secure remote access.
Sure. No, we came up with the name fairly randomly, but I'm glad to retroactively say it has to do with security.
Well, it's armor. It's armor for your enterprise remote access. How's that?
Yeah. Sure. I like it.
Okay. So our first question is for you, Yama. Tell us about the different ways that we can try out Hive.io. Do you have a free version available for people to get started if they want to?
Yes, actually, we have 3 different ways people can experience Hive.io. One is the traditional way of setting up some time. We can sit with you and give you a live demo. Another way is what we call a community edition, or CE, which is a full version of the software that's limited to size, number of instances, or number of desktops. You can download that off of our website and own it. And then the third way is what we call an immersion lab, which is you don't download anything. You just log in and experience the product, the console right online that's already been deployed, and you don't have to install anything. So 3 different ways you can experience the product.
Excellent. Our next question is for Glyptodon, and it's why should I use Glyptodon versus open source Guacamole?
It really boils down to whether you want the support of a company behind it or not. We've tried to streamline the installation of things through our packages, and part of that goes to the way that we can provide support around them, and that since they're packages of our design, we know what to expect. But I think it's more a question of whether you would be happy supporting yourself and engaging with the upstream community directly, or whether you want a company that you can turn to. The content of the packages, we're pretty careful to keep that identical to the upstream. Even in the case that we need to make a patch or fix a bug, we do that by contributing upstream first and then backporting the change once it's been accepted. So support would be the main difference there.
Okay. So, Mike, I understand that you have you're making it available at no cost right now through the pandemic. In a normal time, how is the product licensed?
Normally, it's priced per core, and you pay based on the type of support you need, whether that's just availability via support tickets or whether you need additional support via the phone or possibly development consultation.
Got it. And Yama, I have a question for you is, where do Hive.io-based virtual machines actually run, in the cloud or on-premises?
Both, actually. So primarily, most of our customers are running on-premises because of some organizations, a financial institution, or if it has to have with things with HIPAA compliance, they run it in their own data center. But we do have a desktop as a service offering that can run in a public cloud as well.
Okay, and just for our audience, the link on your screen is clickable if you'd like to fill out our survey. Don't forget, we're going to give away a $50 gift card to one lucky winner that fills it out. But I want to ask our two panelists a final question. When you think about what enterprises and organizations of all stripes are going through to react to deploying work from home technologies and enable remote workforce, and really change their management style too, what one piece of advice or wisdom would you give these organizations as something that they really need to be thinking about as they move forward with these deployments? Let's start with you, Yama, on this one.
I think to me, it's all about efficiency and ease of use. What you don't want to do in an environment or a situation like this is to get involved with a more of a complex situation. There's products out there that, everybody will claim we're easiest to use, and easy to manage and deploy. Everybody will tell you that. But the reality is that, products can get complex, can get hard to use, can have issues. And the fact that you can't travel and get to physical systems and such, it makes it probably exponentially more difficult to manage a situation that can, a bad situation get worse. So really spend time looking at that in more detail in terms of what is it doing for my employees and workforce from a usability and efficiency perspective, but also for my own team and the IT organization in terms of running the system. So really focus on that, I would say, ease of use, efficiency, and making sure that you don't the rug doesn't get pulled from under you down the road.
That's really good advice, Mike. What's your thought? What are your thoughts on that question?
I would say we need to use this moment to be prepared for anything that's coming. It's this concept of remote work really shouldn't be considered something of a privilege, but rather something that's standard that should be available. The flexibility and agility that provides, it's something that we should keep available regardless of whether there's actively a pandemic. So while the current crisis certainly underscored that, we should maintain this level of preparedness going forward. Employees should be able to rely on being able to access their work, even if something prevents them from heading into the office.
That's a really good point. I've said it a number of times in this event. I'm a big believer in never letting a crisis go to waste. And, it's kind of an overused cliche, but it's the truth. So there's definitely a lot of, I think, a lot of lessons that we're going to learn when we get through to the other side of this. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for participating in today's event and for your thoughts in answer to these questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And I'm going to give away our final two $100 Amazon gift cards in just 1 second here. And our winners are, there we go, Kate Forster from Illinois and Jonathan Cawthorn from Wisconsin. Kate and Jonathan, thank you so much for, and to everyone on our in our event for participating today. Please, if you have not filled out the survey, please do so. We would love to get your thoughts on this format and the overall event. Thank you, everyone, for your time.